Chapter 803. After reaching an agreement with Hyojin, Naruto's faction began to build momentum for the next vote of confidence. With the help of Naruto's faction, the news quickly spread throughout the village. After learning that the village was going to skip the last competition and directly enter the vote of confidence of all the Jonins, the Uchiha clan suddenly became excited. In the eyes of the Uchiha clan, this was undoubtedly a trick played by the village when they had no other way out. Because the Uchiha clan had long believed that Chief Fuyue would defeat Hyojin and become the fifth Naruto, they could not accept this decision of the village at all. Fuyue, who had already regarded the position of Naruto as his own, rushed into Naruto's office without thinking about it. 3 generations. How can the village change the election rules so casually? Glaring at 3 generations, Fuyue almost roared, "We, the Uchiha clan, will never agree to it." 3 generations smiled and poured a cup of tea for Fuyue and said calmly, "Fuyue, don't forget that the vote of confidence is the tradition of the village to elect Naruto." Fuyue immediately asked, "But haven't the new rules been set for the election of the 5th generation?" In the meeting of the higher-ups, this was passed through a vote. 3 generations did not deny it. He nodded slightly and said, "Well, it's true. After the martial arts competition, whether it's you or Hyojin, your strength has been recognized by the village. You are excellent ninjas who are qualified to run for the 5th Naruto, so the next step is naturally the vote of confidence." This, Fuyue was speechless for a moment. 3 generations put away his smile and said seriously, "Fuyue, you have to understand that this is the election of Naruto, not the test of Chunin and Jonin. Strength is only one of the necessary conditions to become the 5th generation, not the only condition. Strength is important, but if you want to become the Naruto recognized by the villagers, you must go through the vote of confidence of the Jonins. No one can cross this link." Fuyue said coldly. 3 generations, this was not agreed in advance. 3 generations did not avoid Fuyue's cold gaze and said bluntly, "The meeting records are in the archives. You can go and check them at any time. The promise of the village is only to include the competition in the election of the 5th generation, but it has never been promised that the ownership of the 5th generation will be decided by the competition." Fuyue frowned and recalled for a moment. He was surprised to find that at the meeting, the village had indeed blurred the weight of the competition in the election of the 5th Naruto. Damn it, they planned this from the start. Fuyue, who realized that he had been fooled from the beginning, suddenly became a little angry. The last meeting was the first time that Fuyue, as the patriarch of the Uchiha clan, confronted the village in a tough manner. Because of his nervousness, many details were not handled well. For example, at that time, because he had just successfully provoked the election of the 5th generation Naruto, he was in a state of excitement, so he ignored some important details and did not finalize the weight of the competition word by word in the election of the 5th generation Naruto, leaving a great loophole for himself, which was exploited by 3 generations. Looking at Fuyue, who was so angry that even his breathing seemed to be a little heavy, 3 generations didn't want to provoke him too much. So he said, "As the patriarch of the Uchiha clan who has awakened the Manjikyu Sharingan, Fuyue, don't you even have the courage to compete fairly with Hyojin?" Fuyue didn't say anything more, just glanced coldly at 3 generations and angrily left Naruto's office. After Fuyue left, 3 generations breathed a long sigh of relief. There is no doubt that 3 generations are not as calm as he appears. But in the face of the Uchiha clan, who has 3 pairs of Manjikyu Sharingan, as the leader of the Naruto clan, he must remain calm. Fortunately, Fuyue is still the same Fuyue he knows. Although Fuyue was extremely angry just now, and even a little exasperated, but 3 generations still saw the weakness in Fuyue's character from Fuyue's fierce appearance. So he believes that Fuyue has actually chosen a compromise in his heart. And 3 generations' guess is right. Although Fuyue is extremely annoyed with the decision of the village, but seeing that the position of Naruto is already in front of him, he really can't make up his mind to flip the table. After all, These days, the Uchiha clan has seen the possibility of ascending to the position of Naruto through the normal election, so no one has mentioned a rebellion. Moreover, as the patriarch, he is too optimistic, thinking that the position of Naruto is at his fingertips, so he didn't make any preparations at all. In a hurry, even if he wants to launch a rebellion, there is no way to start, because the preparation of materials, intelligence, and personnel mobilization, etc., all these things take time. Therefore, Uchiha clan, whose protest was fruitless, and the door to Naruto was not completely closed, had to choose to compromise. There's also a very important factor in this, that is, they think that even if it is a vote of confidence, Hyojin is not an opponent who can threaten them. The Uchiha clan still feel good about themselves, thinking that their chances of winning are very high. Soon, both sides began to canvass for votes. The Uchiha clan put down their pride and began to visit other clans in the village, one by one. The arrogant Uchiha clan had to squeeze out a smile in front of others. The Naruto clan also went all out to canvass for votes for Hyojin. And as one of the protagonists of the election of 5th generation Naruto, Hyojin clan has already quietly left the village and rushed back to his air fortress above the sea. Unlike Fuyue, Hyojin clan is never blindly confident. Preparing for both sides and considering the worst-case scenario is Hyojin clan's habit. So in the matter of fusing the Rinnegan, he is much more important than the election of 5th generation Naruto clan. For him, Naruto clan is just an empty title. Only strength is the Real foundation. And he is very clear that in the entire history of the shinobi world, only Otsutsuki Kagaya and the Sage of Six Paths have been able to achieve Kekkei Genkai. And all the tailed beasts, and even all the chakra in the entire shinobi world, were actually divided by the Sage of Six Paths himself, and passed down through handshaking. Just think about it. If all the chakra in the shinobi world originate from a single Kekkei Genkai, then the case that all the chakra in the shinobi world cannot be gathered, how difficult would it be to break through the Kekkei Genkai? Excluding personal emotional factors with the objective judgment of a researcher, Hyojin clan is very clear that the probability of him breaking through the Kekkei Genkai is far greater than the probability of success. So he must prepare a backup plan for resurrection before carrying out the ritual, and the Rinnegan in Xianglin's eye sockets that is fusing is very important. Hyojin clan is not afraid of making mistakes. What he is afraid of is not having the opportunity to make up for it, and a pair of Rinnegan can give him a precious opportunity to try and make mistakes. Second, please recommend votes, monthly votes. Chapter 804. In the Laboratory of the Sky Fortress. Looking at Xianglin, who was lying on the operating table, Hyojin's face became solemn. He just glanced at it with his Tenseigan and found that a large area of cell necrosis had appeared on the biological armor type 1 that Xianglin was wearing at the moment. The color has also changed from the original pure white to a dark yellow color of varying shades, and the function of the armor has also decreased. Has it reached its limit so soon? Hyojin secretly said while looking at the test data. Although it is very clear that this is only an emergency, biological armor type 1 can't support Xianglin to complete the fusion of the Rinnegan, but it is still a little beyond Hyojin's expectation that a large area of cell necrosis has appeared on the biological armor type 1 so quickly. At the same time, he also felt a little lucky. Fortunately, he made some preparations in advance. These days, he has made a lot of money in the village, which is enough for him to immediately start developing the biological armor type 2. Otherwise, the consequences would be unimaginable. After the physical examination, Hyojin asked Xianglin, who looked tired, "Is there any swelling in your eye socket?" Xianglin shook her head and said, "Not recently." Hyojin nodded. "That's good." Through the careful observation of his own Tenseigan, Hyojin found that the two pairs of eternal Manjikyu Sharingan in Xianglin's eye sockets have merged together in a relatively strange state of dual pupils. And this phenomenon is obviously the early manifestation of pupil fusion. According to Hyojin's prediction, this initial stage will last about a month, and then it will enter the next stage, that is, the phase of pupil resonance and dual pupil fusion, and this stage will last about 1 to 2 weeks. Once the dual pupil fusion is completed, the two pairs of eternal Manjikyu Sharingan will completely merge into one, and then it will enter the final stage. That is, the stage of qualitative change after the unification of the power of Jinjutsu. Among these three stages, the first and second stages are actually not the most difficult. The real test for Xiang Lin is the last stage, which is the qualitative change after the unification of the two pairs of eternal Manjikyu Sharingan's power of 10,000 nature. Because the stage of qualitative change is the real transcendence, from the peak of Sharingan to the stage of Sage Eye. Hyojin's Type 1 biological armor was so difficult to support even the first stage. Therefore, before the fusion in Xiang Lin's eye socket entered the qualitative change stage, he had to develop a more powerful Type 2 biological armor. Hyojin spread the finished manuscripts on the table and began the research and development of the Type 2 biological armor in an orderly manner. Aside from making money, Hyojin had spent most of his time designing the Type 2 biological armor. He had dozens of blueprints. Coupled with his previous experience in developing the Type 1 biological armor, even though the development of the Type 2 biological armor seemed complicated, it was not impossible for him to start in my village. Both sides were canvassing for votes in full swing. Then I'll leave it to you. Hyojin bowed to Shikaku. Shikaku, who sent Hyojin to the door, smiled and said, "Please rest assured, the Nara clan will make a careful choice in the vote of confidence." Kuroto didn't say anything more and politely excused himself. After walking out of the Nara clan's mansion, Mute, who accompanied Hyojin, complained, "Kuroto, now you know how tiring this kind of work is. You've been hiding for so long and only showed up today. Do you know how much we've suffered to canvass votes for you before?" Hyojin smiled awkwardly. "I'm sorry." "Huh." Mute was startled and immediately smiled. "You're suddenly so polite, I'm a little not used to it." Hyojin's eyes flashed, and then he calmly returned to normal. There is no doubt that the person who cooperated with the village to canvass votes is not the real Hyojin, but Itachi, who was assigned by Hyojin. In the entire my village, Chakra's control was delicate enough to pass off as the real one. Only Jishuei and Itachi could disguise themselves as Hyojin. Even Shinichi, who also had the Manjikyu Sharingan, was slightly inferior to Chakra's delicate control. And because Hyojin was fully focused on developing the Type 2 biological armor, he had no energy to take care of canvassing votes. Jishuei was the Manjikyu of the Uchiha clan. Her every move was under the attention of all parties, so the tiring work of canvassing votes fell to Itachi, who had not yet exposed his Manjikyu Sharingan. Just when Itachi and Mute, who pretended to be Hyojin, walked out of the Nara clan's mansion, they happened to bump into Uchiha Fuyue and others who had also just come out of the Akimichi clan. Seeing his competitor, Fugaku snorted coldly, not concealing his hostility at all. Oh no, what a coincidence! Mute's heart was in a mess. The domineering image of the Uchiha clan was too deep in people's hearts. She was really a little worried that Uchiha Fuyue and Hyojin would fight here. Itachi, who was disguised as Hyojin, was also quite surprised to see his father, who was also canvassing votes. But he quickly restrained his emotions and didn't care about the hostility shown by Fuyue and left straight away. In fact, Itachi had also gone to the various clans in the village to canvass votes for Fuyue as the eldest son of the Uchiha clan. Because of this, the attitude of the various clans in the village towards the two Naruto candidates is very different. Take the Nara clan he just visited as an example. When he visited as the eldest son of the Uchiha clan, although Shikaku was polite, he showed an obvious sense of alienation. And when he visited Shikaku disguised as Suijin just now, although Shikaku didn't promise anything, his words showed his support for Kuroto. Such a strong contrast made him understand that his father has no chance of winning the vote of confidence. This has nothing to do with who the opponent is, because Itachi knows very well that Hyojin didn't put any effort in canvassing votes. The Uchiha clan didn't lose in the hands of Hyojin, but lost in their own hands, lost in the hearts of the people. Itachi is sometimes very puzzled. He doesn't understand such a simple truth, such a clear fact. Why can't those clansmen who boast of their superior pupil power see it? Even his father, who has the eternal Manjiku Sharingan, can't see it. Especially when he heard the optimistic discussion of the clansmen in the clan land about Uchiha obtaining the position of Naruto, he felt more and more depressed. In his eyes, Naruto not only represents power, but also represents the responsibility to bear everything and protect everything. However, whether it is his father who is eager to fight or the clamoring clansmen, they only seem to have the power and glory brought by Naruto in their eyes, but they don't have a clear understanding of the corresponding responsibilities. First, I'm asking for recommendation votes, monthly votes. Chapter 805. In the blink of an eye, a week has passed. In this week, the Uchiha clan went all out, visiting almost all the clans in the village. Even some jonin of civilian origin sent their clansmen to visit one by one. This move of the Uchiha clan surprised everyone in Mai, but the estrangement between the two sides can't be changed overnight. Naruto's personal network has been operating for several generations. Through overt and covert exchanges of interests, such as Ino Shikacho and other small clans, in fact, have long been tied together with Naruto's family. In addition, the members of the Hyuga clan also spontaneously canvassed votes for Hyojin. So on the scene, the Uchiha Fuyue and Hyojin seem to be engaged in a fierce competition. But in fact, in the eyes of many discerning people, the outcome has long been decided. Because of this, in order to better deal with the possible rebellion launched by the Uchiha clan after the election, the village delayed the vote of confidence again and again. On the surface, the village used the vote of confidence to stabilize the Uchiha clan, so that the Uchiha clan can focus their energy on canvassing votes. In the dark, the village communicated with the major clans and actively prepared for the possible rebellion launched by the Uchiha clan in the future. It can be said that in the midst of the lively election, an undercurrent is surging in the village. Through the communication crow sent by Itachi, Hyojin, who is in the air fortress, has complete control of the situation in the village. He knows very well that as long as the ownership of the fifth generation is not determined, the Uchiha clan will not be able to make up their mind to rebel, and the situation in the village will not collapse immediately. After sending away the communication crow, Hyojin moved his gaze to the large nutrition tank in front of him. There was a brand new biological armor floating in the large nutrient tank. Compared to the previous biological armor type I, this new biological armor was not only more beautiful in appearance, but its proportions were also very coordinated. Its surface even had a muscle structure that was very similar to the human body, its lines elegant and filled with power. Without a doubt, this new biological armor was the Type 2 biological armor that Hyojin had spent a lot of money to develop. Compared to the old model, the Type 2 biological armor's overall design was more reasonable. Hyojin had even specially designed an internal meridian system and an external muscle system for it. The new meridian system has increased the efficiency of the Type 2 bioarmor's yang release chakra transmission by more than 3 times compared to the old one, which could be said to be a qualitative leap. Also, because the new meridian system was clearly organized and the key areas were reinforced with corresponding seals, the stability of the yang escape chakra was also more stable and safer than the old model. The new muscle system also allowed the biological armor type I to not only provide the host with an endless supply of yang escape chakra, but also increase the host's physical strength after wearing it. This was the most direct way to increase the host's combat power. It could be said that the muscle system designed by Hyojin made the biological armor type I truly an armor. Hyojin had high expectations for this biological armor type II. This was because it was not a half-finished product that was developed in a hurry like the biological armor type I. It was the crystallization of Hyojin's current biotechnology. It may not be perfect, but it was definitely a masterpiece. Moving his gaze from the Type 2 bioarmor to the large nutrition tanks on the side, a smile appeared on Kuroto's face, and the corners of his mouth also rose slightly. In the 5 large nutrition tanks on the side of the biological armor type I, there were 5 Thunder Escape clones that had not yet fully developed floating. While he was developing the biological armor type II, Hyojin also collected Kakashi's cell tissues and cloned 5 Thunder Escape clones. He could do whatever he wanted as long as he had money. And to Kuroto's surprise, his cell tissues and Kakashi's cell tissues have a very high degree of compatibility. The most troublesome cell fusion process in the past was completed almost effortlessly. This was also the reason why he cloned 5 Thunder Escape clones at once. There were simply too many cells that had completed the fusion. Even though he had gone through a strict selection process, there were still 5 groups that he could not choose from. Therefore, he simply cloned all 5 groups of cells that had been fused. Soon, Hyojin's eyes swept through the 5 large nutrition tanks in front of him. Although the 5 clones that were soaking in the nutrition tank had yet to fully develop from the monitoring data, these 5 clones were all very outstanding. Every single one of them was of the highest quality. If there were no accidents, he would not need to spend any effort to collect the cells of other Thunder Escape ninjas. After taking out the biological armor type I from the large nutrition tank, Hyojin summoned Xianglin. Fusing with the Rinnegan was too much of a burden for the young Xianglin. After nearly 2 months of torture, she had lost a lot of weight. Although she was not as skinny as Nagato and had sunken eyes, her body was clearly showing signs of weakness. Hyojin sighed softly. Xianglin, it has been hard on you. Xianglin, who had her eyes closed, quickly shook her head. Your Excellency, I'm fine. I can still hold on. Hyojin did not waste any more time and immediately said, the biological armor type I developed for you has been completed. Is that so? That's great. Xianglin's face immediately lit up. The biological armor type I on her body was about to completely lose the ability to transport yang release chakra, so she had been feeling more and more exhausted in the past few days. After replacing Xianglin with the new biological armor type I, Hyojin looked at the test data on the instrument while asking casually, how is it? Does this new biological armor have any adverse reactions? Xianglin felt a little bit and immediately said with joy, Your Excellency, this new biological armor can transport a lot of chakra. Hyojin nodded. The power is 3 times the previous one. Xiangli took a few more steps, then jumped up and said excitedly, My lord, I'm here. Your Excellency, this biological armor fits me much better than the previous one, and after I put it on, my strength seems to have increased. Hyojin was not too excited, because these are all expected things. When Xianglin was tired of tossing and turning, Hyojin called her to his side, and then used the Tenseigan to carefully check the fusion of the Rinnegan in Xianglin's eye sockets. At this time, the 2 pairs of Eternal Manjikyu Sharingan in Xianglin's eye sockets have completely merged into one, and the dual pupil part has also begun to gradually merge. I finally made it. Hyojin breathed a sigh of relief. At most, in 3 to 5 days, the fusion will enter the final and most difficult 3rd stage, and he finally completed the biological armor type I before the final stage. Second update, please recommend votes. Monthly votes. Chapter 806. Hyojin, who was fiddling with the instrument, glanced from time to time at Xianglin, who was lying unconscious on the operating table not far away, with a solemn expression on his face. On the 3rd day after putting on the Type 2 biological armor, Xianglin fell into a deep coma without warning, and his body temperature, blood pressure, and other physical signs also showed abnormalities one after another. Hyojin knew that this was the fusion of the Rinnegan, and it had reached the final qualitative change link. Because he didn't know what would happen in the qualitative change link, so just in case, Hyojin took the unconscious Xianglin out of the laboratory and found a quiet and empty cave on a remote island. After connecting all the instruments and equipment in the cave, Hyojin quickly tested Xianglin's body through the instrument. Why is the body temperature still so high? Looking at the abnormal values on the instrument, Hyojin's face sank. It was the first time in the entire shinobi world to fuse the Rinnegan in this way. So even if Hyojin had made all kinds of preparations, accidents still happen one after another, and at this moment, he himself was a little uncertain. Walking to the operating table, Hyojin opened his Tenseigan and once again observed Xiang Lin's closed eyes. At this moment, the pair of eyeballs in Xiang Lin's eye sockets had changed from the previous oval shape to a normal sphere, and there was no trace of the two pairs of eyeballs fusing. On the scarlet pupil, an incomparably complex pattern was reflected. In the pattern, diamonds and triangles were intertwined with each other, and in the outer circle, there was a round of angular gear-shaped circle which framed all the intertwined lines inside. Has it completely overlapped? The dual pupil fusion is the embodiment of the fusion of the two pairs of eternal Manjikyu Sharingan's pupil power, and the pattern on the two pairs of eternal Manjikyu Sharingan's eyes have completely overlapped, which means that the process of the pupil power fusion has been successfully completed. Hyojin's heart was shocked because when he checked half an hour ago, the pattern on Xiang Lin's pupil was still obviously disordered, but at this moment, it was as neat as one. After that, he sensed Xiang Lin's body. He discovered that within Xiang Lin's body, there was indeed a trace of omniscient nature's power. However, this omniscient nature's power was relatively weak. Compared to the omniscient nature's power that Danzo had displayed on the ritual altar, it was incomparable in both quality and quantity. It's starting. Hyojin took a deep breath and slowly retreated. The emergence of the boundless nature power meant that the final qualitative change was about to begin. No, it had already begun. The qualitative change was happening in Xiang Lin's eye sockets. Glancing sideways at the instrument monitoring Xiang Yu's vital signs, Hyojin secretly prayed, "You must hold on." If it had been someone else with abnormal body temperature and blood pressure for a long time, they would have died a long time ago. Only the cockroach-like vitality of the Whirlpool family could hold on until now. But even if Xiang Lin's vitality was extraordinary, there was still a limit. Time passed little by little. Hyojin stood quietly on the side, observing the changes in Xiang Lin's vital signs while recording the data of Xiang Lin's various vital signs. These data would also be helpful for Hyojin's future bloodline fusion ritual. And as time went on, the omniscient nature's power in Xiang Lin's body began to become stronger and stronger. After 3 hours, the omniscient nature's power reached its peak, and it even began to overflow from Xiang Lin's body in the form of chakra. Why is it overflowing? Hyojin was taken aback. The scene in front of him was far beyond his expectations. It stands to reason that after the omniscient nature's power on the two pairs of eternal Manjikyu Sharingan is unified, the qualitative change should be completed in an instant. This process should be done in one go, and there should be no twists and turns. Just as Hyojin's brows were twisted, thinking about the cause of this abnormality, Xiang Lin suddenly sat up on the operating table, holding her head with both hands and wailing in pain. Roar! At the same time, a golden phantom accompanied by a soul-shaking roar, as if breaking free from a cage, was projected from Xiang Lin's body, and then quickly turned into a golden-armored deity. Susanoo. Hyojin immediately recognized this golden Susanoo. It was a golden Susu contained in the pair of eternal Manjikyu Sharingan on his fire release clone. Rumble. As the complete form of Susanoo was projected out of Xiang Lin's body, the originally quiet cave immediately began to shake. This golden Susanoo seemed to be completely uncontrollable. As soon as it appeared, it showed a violent trend, waving a golden sword on each of its 4 arms, slashing around. Swish, as a last resort, Hyojin immediately used the teleportation technique to retreat to the distance. In the shaking of the earth, the entire cave was instantly destroyed by this golden Susanoo that was nearly 100 meters high, and all the instruments that Hyojin had set up beside Xiang Lin's operating table were also destroyed. And with the collapse of the cave, a quiet moonlight sprinkled in through the cracks of the collapsed stones, making the cave more illusory and unreal. Suddenly, Xiang Li, who was on the operating table, shouted again. Immediately afterward, a blood-red phantom was projected from Xiang Lin's body, and in just a short time of 1 or 2 breaths, the blood-red phantom changed into the evil Susanoo contained in the pair of eternal Manjikyu Sharingan of Danzo. Another Susanoo. Hyojin was completely shocked. At this moment, Xiang Lin actually launched two Susanoo at the same time, and they were two complete Susanoo with a height of 100 meters for limbs and full armor. Oh no! A thought quickly flashed in Hyojin's mind. The fact that Xiang Lin can launch two Susanoo at the same time only shows one problem. That is, the two pairs of Eternal Manjikyu Sharingan that have merged together on the surface, their pupil power is not really unified. These two pairs of Eternal Manjikyu Sharingan with living characteristics seem to be resisting the unification of the pupil power. Perhaps they are faintly aware that once the pupil power is unified, they will completely disappear in the fusion. And the two Susanoo that have gone berserk are undoubtedly the most intuitive manifestation of the two pairs of Eternal Manjikyu Sharingan's resistance to the pupil power unification. After realizing this, Hyojin understood that it is impossible to complete the final fusion by relying on Xiang Lin alone. So he slowly made a hand seal while saying, "Then let me make you give up." After saying that, a soft sky blue Tenseigan chakra quickly wrapped Hyojin's whole body. Here's the first one, asking for recommendation votes. I heard that the monthly votes will start to double on the 28th. Please keep your monthly votes first. When the 28th doubles, one vote will be equal to 2 votes. Chapter 807. Rumble. Under the devastation of the two complete forms Susanoo, the dome of the cave was immediately opened, and the rocks collapsed one by one, stirring up smoke and dust all over the sky. Roar! Roar! The two Susanoo in the rampage were still making mournful roars. The surrounding broken karst caves were like a loudspeaker, transmitting the roars of the two Susanoo to the entire island, causing the birds and beasts on the island to tremble in fear. In the smoke and dust, Xiang Lin held her head with her hands, with a painful look on her face. Hyojin, who had activated the Tenseigan chakra mode and was floating in the air, looked over and found that Xiang Lin seemed to have lost her own will at this time. TSK. Hyojin's eyes were cold, and he spat lightly. The two Susanoo that were rampage were obviously two pairs of Eternal Manjikyu Sharingan that had merged together, bypassing Xiang Lin's will and opened it without authorization. In other words, these two Susanoo are the embodiment of the will of the two pairs of Eternal Manjikyu Sharingan. In the rampage, they attacked everything around them and constantly tried to escape from Xiang Lin's body and escape from each other's bodies. That's right, these two complete Susanoo forms were actually overlapping. The upper half of their bodies were separated from each other, but the lower half of their bodies overlapped with Xiang Lin's body, looking very strange. Hyojin, who was floating in the air, raised his arms at this time and clenched his fists. Boom! In an instant, an invisible force came from all directions, pressing the two complete forms Susanoo that were trying to break free from Xiang Lin's body back. Hyojin must prevent these two Susanoo from separating from each other, so he immediately used Rain Pull to forcibly push the two complete forms Susanoo together, trying to make them completely overlap. Roar! The roar sounded again, and the two complete forms Susanoo that were squeezed by the invisible force did not choose to surrender, but struggled hard. Hyojin suddenly frowned. This kind of wrestling wasn't something he was good at. The 100-meter-tall Susanoo has infinite strength, and whether it is the golden flame Susanoo in front of him or the evil Susanoo, both of them are launched from the Eternal Manjikyu Sharingan that contains the power of all things and can be regarded as the best among all the Susanoo. If it's an attack against an attack, Hyojin, who has entered the Tenseigan chakra mode, is not afraid at all, but if it's a contest of strength, then Hyojin is a little overwhelmed. Boom! 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 The two complete forms of Susanoo kept attacking the invisible walls that imprisoned them, and each attack contained a tremendous force that shook the earth and mountains. Hyojin's expression became more and more gloomy, and a thin layer of sweat gradually appeared on his forehead. Because every morning, Hyojin would store all the chakra in his body into the Yin seal between his eyebrows, so his Yin release body was actually in a relatively weak state. Now he had to fight against two and control the two complete forms of Susanoo, which suddenly made him feel a little powerless. At this moment, Hyojin noticed that the Type 2 biological armor on Xiang Lin's body suddenly swelled, and the white muscle tissue all bulged high. Overload mode. Kuroda was startled by this. Overload mode is a special function that Hyojin designed for the Type 2 biological armor. Once the Type 2 biological armor detects that the host's life is in danger, the Type 2 biological armor will release all the internal seals and provide a huge amount of chakra to the host in a short period of time to support the host through the crisis. And now that the Type 2 biological armor automatically activated overload mode, it undoubtedly means that Xiang Lin's life is in danger. There's less than 10 minutes left. As the designer, Hyojin knew very well that the overload mode of the Type 2 biological armor could only last for 10 minutes at most, and if it encountered an extreme situation, the time could be further shortened. Seeing that the two complete forms of Susanoo did not show any signs of exhaustion, and that Xiang Lin's time was running out, Hyojin's eyes immediately turned cold, and he no longer hesitated. In an instant, 6 black, truth-seeking balls flashed out from between his eyebrows. These 6 truth-seeking balls flew to his right wrist one after another, and they flew around his wrist at a uniform speed. At this moment, Hyojin's right hand grasped the air, and the 6 truth-seeking balls were in his palm, and he softly said, "Golden Wheel Reincarnation Explosion." Whoosh, accompanied by a surge of chakra. The 6 truth-seeking balls in Hyojin's palm instantly fused and turned into a dazzling golden longsword. Under the cold, frosty moonlight, Hyojin, who was floating in the air with the golden sword in his hand, looked like a god. He stared indifferently at the two complete forms of Susanoo in front of him, and his eyes were overflowing with killing intent. Hyojin knew better than anyone what the cost of killing these two Susanoo would be, because these two Susanoo were the embodiment of the 2 pairs of eternal Manjikyu Sharingan's pupil power. Once they were killed, the 2 pairs of eternal Manjikyu Sharingan's vitality would inevitably be greatly damaged, which would greatly reduce the probability of fusing and attacking the Rinnegan. But if these 2 pairs of eternal Manjikyu Sharingan were allowed to continue doing whatever they wanted, they would attack Xiang Lin's will and destroy his body, and then Xiang Lin would definitely die. Since you don't want to surrender, then go to hell. As soon as his voice fell, Hyojin waved the golden sword in his right hand and slashed horizontally at the 2 complete forms of Susanoo in front of him. Swish! The dazzling golden sword instantly slashed at the junction between the overlapping and separating waists of the 2 complete forms of Susanoo. The Golden Wheel Reincarnation Explosion, composed of 6 truth-seeking balls, and the length was deliberately compressed by Hyojin, so it was not something that the 2 complete forms of Susanoo could resist at all. Kacha! As the golden sword drew a dazzling arc, the sound of breaking echoed, and the 2 complete forms of Susanoo were instantly cut in half at the waist. The parts above the waist that were split from each other immediately turned into flying ash in the air, and the parts below the waist that overlapped with each other instantly merged into one and shrank into Xiang Lin's body. Xiang Lin, who was sitting on the operating table with a painful face, also lay back at this time, and his whole person became quiet, as if he had fainted again. "Ho!" Hyojin gasped as he exited the Tenseigan chakra mode. In the case of not using the Seal chakra, 6 truth-seeking balls was his limit. Here's the second one. I only ask for recommendation votes. There will be a doubling of the monthly votes on the 28th. Please keep it first, and vote again on the 28th, please. Chapter 808. After panting for a while, Hyojin looked at Xiang Lin on the operating table in the distance with a perturbed face. His golden wheel reincarnation explosion, just now, was not a random slash, but aimed at the overlapping boundary of the 2 complete Susanoos. After the slash, the lower body of the 2 complete Susanoos was preserved, and the upper body that was trying to struggle to break away was turned into nothingness at the same time. In this way, although the ocular power of the 2 pairs of eternal Manjikyu Sharingan was severely damaged, it also recovered part of the loss. I hope the remaining ocular power is enough to break through the Rinnegan. With this thought in mind, Hyojin slowly walked towards Xiang Lin. At this time, even the instruments on Xianglin's body were crooked and overturned in the rubble, so Hyojin had no way to know the real-time physical data of Xianglin's body. But looking from afar, Xianglin's breathing seemed to have returned to normal, and the Type 2 biological armor on his body also exited the overload mode. As for the omniscient force that had been released before, at this moment, it was all slowly shrinking into Xianglin's body. Seeing this scene, Hyojin's heart was a little relieved, and his pace was a little faster. After coming to the operating table, Kuroda couldn't wait to look at Xianglin's closed eye sockets. He found that Xianglin's pupils were still scarlet, but the patterns on them seemed to have been stirred by some kind of force, and there was an obvious distortion. This scene reminded Hyojin of the scene when Danzo almost succeeded and evolved the Rinnegan. And just when Hyojin was a little distracted, the Sharingan pattern in Xianglin's pupil became more and more distorted, as if something was constantly stirring it, pulling the straight lines out of the curve. Hyojin's eyes suddenly narrowed. At this time, he not only noticed the changes in Xianglin's eye sockets, but also noticed the changes in Xianglin's body. At this moment, the omniscient force on Xianglin's body suddenly skyrocketed. Then, a huge amount of chakra instantly enveloped Xianglin's body, causing the unconscious Xianglin to slowly float up from the operating table. At the same time, the Type 2 biological armor that had exited the overload mode not long ago swelled up again and entered the overload mode again without warning. Hyojin, who was at the side, quickly took 2 steps back. He didn't interfere with the changes in Xianglin's body. This was obviously the final qualitative change. Success or failure would depend on this. Very soon, Xianglin, who was floating above the operating table, had a change in her aura. An indescribable aura emanated from her body. Huh, what's wrong with me? Suddenly, Xianglin, who had been unconscious all this time, woke up. She discovered that she was floating in midair, and she immediately panicked. Hyojin, who was at the side, quickly said Xiangli, but halfway through his words, he suddenly stopped because he suddenly discovered that Xianglin's eyes, which had been closed all this time, had opened at this moment, and what was in her eye sockets wasn't a scarlet Sharingan, but a Rinnegan with circles of mysterious patterns. Rinnegan. Hyojin was stunned. When he saw the lavender Rinnegan in Xianglin's eye sockets, he didn't know why, but a sense of unreality surged from the bottom of his heart. In order to get this pair of Rinnegan, he didn't know how much effort he had put in and how much he had paid. Just now, he was even ready to accept failure. But he didn't expect that things would suddenly turn around, and the Rinnegan, which was known as the eyes of immortals, appeared in front of him so calmly. I made a pair of Rinnegan. There is no doubt that whether it is the origin of the bloodline fusion ceremony or the fusion of 2 pairs of eternal Manjiki Sharingan, the pair of Rinnegan in front of him can be regarded as the creation of Hyojin. And after repeatedly confirming that the Rinnegan in Xianglin's eye sockets was the Rinnegan that he had seen in Nagato's eyes, Hyojin was extremely excited. What he was excited about was not only because he had personally created a pair of Rinnegan, but also because this pair of Rinnegan was the 3rd pair of Rinnegan in the shinobi world besides Sage of the 6 Paths and Madara Uchiha. But because of the existence of this pair of Rinnegan, it shows that the bloodline fusion ceremony he designed for Danzo can really make a qualitative change in chakra and create endless miracles. Listening to Hyojin's murmur, Xianglin realized that she had opened her eyes, and because of this absent-mindedness, her whole body fell from mid-air and fell heavily on the operating table. Ouch! After crying out in pain, Xianglin rubbed her head and said in surprise, "My lord, I can see again, and it's very clear. Don't move, let me have a good look." Hyojin immediately walked over, held Xianglin's shoulder, and carefully examined the Rinnegan in her eye sockets. Xianglin quickly sat up straight and tried to open her eyes wide so that Hyojin could see clearly. Hyojin carefully observed for a while and confirmed that the Rinnegan in Xianglin's eyes is almost exactly the same as the Rinnegan in Nagato's eyes, whether it is the color of the pupil or the circle of circular lines. If there is any difference, then it is that the Rinnegan in Nagato's eyes is more magical, while the Rinnegan in Xianglin's eye sockets is slightly dimmer. However, this is also normal. After all, Xianglin's Rinnegan has just been awakened, not to mention the lack of nourishment. During the awakening process, she was also hit by Hyojin's golden wheel reincarnation explosion, so the consumption of her pupil power is not small. Being able to successfully awaken the Rinnegan is already very rare. After examining for a long time, Hyojin asked Xianglin, "How do you feel?" Xianglin honestly said, "I can see things much clearer than before, but after looking for a long time, my head is a little dizzy." Hyojin smiled. "Dizziness is normal. Don't worry too much. The Rinnegan is not so easy to bear." When the old Madara Uchiha transplanted his Rinnegan to the young Nagato, he must have used some means to seal the ability of the Rinnegan, so that Nagato could live through his childhood safely. When Nagato awakened the Rinnegan, he not only grew up, but also received the guidance of Jiraiya, one of the 3 ninjas, and became a qualified ninja, so he could barely bear the Rinnegan. Compared to Nagato, Xianglin is younger, so it is normal for her body to bear the Rinnegan. According to Hyojin's estimation, with Xianglin's physique, he may have to wait until he is 17 or 18 years old before he can bear the Rinnegan alone like Nagato. And before that, if Xianglin wants to live a normal life, he either has to seal the ability of the Rinnegan in his eye sockets, temporarily turning it into a pair of ordinary eyes, or always wear biological armor. The first update is here. I only ask for recommendation votes. Please vote on the 28th. Thank you. Chapter 809. In the underground palace of the Sound Village. Edo Tensei Technique. With a light shout, 2 complex psychic techniques suddenly extended from the ground, and in the center of these 2 psychic techniques, 2 coffins with the words first and second engraved on their lids rose from the ground and appeared in the underground palace. Kacha, with 2 consecutive crisp sounds, the coffin lids fell, revealing the 2 corpses in the coffins. At this time, a dark shadow came out of the darkness. This dark shadow was not a bystander. It was the ninja school instructor Uchiha Do who escaped from I not long ago, and the Edo Tensei technique just now also came from his hands. Walking to the 2 coffins, Uchiha Do checked the 2 impure earth bodies inside, and immediately revealed a smile, and said to himself, "Finally mastered this technique." Through the previous attempt, Uchiha Do confirmed that not only has he mastered the Edo Tensei technique, but also through the notes left by Orochimaru, successfully channeled the 2 impure earth bodies created by Orochimaru. Soon, Uchiha Do restrained the joy on his face and made a hand seal to cancel the channeling. Bang bang! In a burst of white smoke, the coffins containing the impure earth bodies disappeared in front of Uchiha Do. With a sullen face, Duru came to his secret room. In the center of this secret room, there was a cloud ninja, tied up in chains from head to toe, and on the ground around this cloud ninja, there were many strange techniques engraved on the ground. Glancing at the terrified cloud ninja on the ground, Uchiha Do did not speak, but calmed his mind, then raised his hands and began to make hand seals, and finally shouted, "Psychic Edo Tensei Technique." With a loud shout, the chakra on his body instantly poured into the technique engraved on the ground. Ah! The scream of the cloud ninja lying in the formation echoed and filled the entire secret chamber. Do immediately looked over nervously and found that the cloud ninja lying on the ground seemed to have been sucked out of his soul by some kind of force. His whole body was curled up into a ball in pain, while talismans, as if from a different world, poured out from all directions and stuck to his body, wrapping him inside and out, turning him into a human cocoon. After a while, everything calmed down, and there was only a human cocoon wrapped in talisman paper in front of Do. Doluo quickly stepped forward and tore the talisman paper, only to find that the figure wrapped in the talisman paper was not the figure he was expecting, but the cloud ninja who was used as a sacrifice before, but he was already dead. How could it fail? Do frowned, and then carefully went through the whole process of casting the spell just now, repeatedly confirming that he did not make any mistakes. After pondering for a while, a hint of joy appeared on Do's face. It seems that Lord Orochimaru is not dead. Obviously, the person who just tried the Edo Tensei was not someone else, but Orochimaru. After losing contact with Orochimaru, Do fell into an unprecedented anxiety and fear. He seemed to have lost his direction again and lost the meaning of living. Therefore, he violated the order of Orochimaru to monitor Naruto and Sasuke in the ninja school, escaped from Mai without authorization, quietly returned to the Sound Village, and mobilized all the Sound Ninjas to search for the missing Orochimaru. However, no matter how Do searched, he could not find the slightest clue of Orochimaru. One must know that in the shinobi world, excluding some monsters, Orochimaru, as one of the Sannin, is already one of the strongest. There are only a few strong enemies in the shinobi world that can make him disappear. Therefore, Do speculated that Orochimaru must have encountered one of the Akatsuki, Amitsukami, or Danzo, whose strength surpassed the Kaga level after defecting. Since there has been no news of Orochimaru for so long, Do is afraid that he is dead. Therefore, Do cracked Orochimaru's laboratory and obtained the information of Orochimaru about the Edo Tensei. Try and make the dead Orochimaru return to the shinobi world through Edo Tensei, which can confuse the boundary between life and death. But with the failure of the Edo Tensei technique just now, Do was sure that Orochimaru didn't die, but was captured or sealed. I must find a way to rescue Orochimaru-sama. Without any hesitation, Do made up his mind. It's just that the ones who captured or sealed Orochimaru must be the Akatsuki, Amitsukami, or Danzo. With the current strength of the village, it is impossible to rescue Orochimaru from the hands of these powerful enemies. For a moment, Do's mind was once again invaded by a feeling of helplessness. Early the next morning, Do left the underground palace and summoned Kimimaro, Yamato, Yugo, and Haku, and ordered, "Stop looking for Orochimaru. Sama for now." Kimimaro, whose face was a little pale, asked bluntly why. Do knew Kimimaro's loyalty to Orochimaru, so he immediately explained, "I have confirmed that Orochimaru, Sama, is not dead, but was captured or sealed by Akatsuki, Amitsukami, or Danzo." Yamato was taken aback. What? Not to mention the Akatsuki and Amitsukami in the shinobi world, Shimura Danzo, who swept the 6 paths of pain and defeated Kyomo's AB combination, is not someone that the Sound Village can deal with. While the four were surprised, Do slowly said, "If we want to rescue Orochimaru-sama, we must obtain the power to negotiate with the Akatsuki, Amitsukami, and Danzo. So, I need you to spend your energy on cracking the 4 important laboratories left by Orochimaru-sama. We must receive all of Orochimaru-sama's power in order to have the qualifications to bargain with those powerful enemies." Kimimaro said coldly, "What about you?" "Me?" Do adjusted the glasses on the bridge of his nose and said with a smile, "I want to go to a place." Although there was a faint smile on Do's face, the 4 could clearly feel Do's determination to die. After hesitating for a moment, Yamato, the oldest among the 4, couldn't help but ask, "Where are you going?" Do shook his head and didn't answer Yamato's question. The 4 looked at each other and found a trace of deep worry in each other's eyes. After losing Orochimaru, the Sound Village lost its backbone. Whether it was Orochimaru's assistant or the 4 Sound Ninjas, none of them had the ability to replace Orochimaru. Because of Orochimaru's several betrayals, the Sound Village couldn't find any real allies at all. So, if they want to rescue Orochimaru, they can only rely on their own strength. After a few words to the 4 Sound Ninjas, Do didn't delay and immediately left the Sound Village. After a long time, Do came to the cave that connected to the Ryuchi cave where Naruto and Hinata were imprisoned. Looking at the bottomless darkness in the cave, Do sighed and said, "I don't know if I can come out again." The second update is here. I only ask for recommendation votes. Please vote after the double event on the 28th. Thank you. Chapter 810. The moonlight that was as cold as frost shone through the gaps in the lush canopy and into the quiet forest, casting mottled shadows that alternated between light and dark on the ground. Swish, suddenly, a breeze blew a leaf on the ground. Beside the dancing leaves, 3 figures shuttled through the mottled shadows. They were Jishui, Itachi, and Shinichi, the 3 kaleidoscopes of the Uchiha clan, who had just received the news from Hyojin and rushed over from the Uchiha clan. After yawning, Shinichi muttered in the team, "It's so late. Why did the boss call us here?" Jishui shook her head. "There must be a reason why Senpai asked us to come here. Don't ask anymore." Itachi pondered for a moment and said, "Senpai asked us to meet in the secret laboratory in the Forest of Death. Maybe it's related to the first-generation cell transplant surgery." "Surgery? That's great." Shinichi grinned. Ever since he fought with Obsidian last time, his eyesight had been greatly damaged, and his eyesight had begun to decline. He had been back in the village for so long, but he had not adapted to it. Therefore, he was more eager to have the transplant surgery than Itachi. Seeing Shinichi's joy, Itachi reminded him lightly, "Brother Shinichi, you have to be mentally prepared for the failure of the surgery." Shinichi was a little confused why. Jishui took over the conversation. "Senpai's transplant technology should be the strongest in the ninja world today, but the first-generation cells are extraordinary. Therefore, even if Senpai is in charge of the surgery, there's still a possibility of failure." Shinichi did not care. What will happen if it fails? Jishui was a little uncertain. Probably will become a tree. The laziness on Shinichi's face instantly froze. Itachi, who was at the side, said seriously, "To be precise, it will be swallowed by the trees." Shinichi glared at Jishui and Itachi. "Hey, did you make this up? You just want to scare me, right?" Jishui shook his head and said seriously, "When I performed the operation, in order to increase the success rate of the operation, Senpai specially asked me to replace the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan with flame." Shinichi's expression became solemn, and he was secretly shocked. Hachi's Sharingan is the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan. Hyojin had once mentioned to Shinichi that there were only 2 ways to recover the ocular power. One was to transplant the primeval cells. With the help of the high-purity yang release contained in the primeval cells, the combination of yin and yang would produce the power of omniscient nature, and then use the power of omniscient nature to replenish the lost ocular power. The other way was to integrate a pair of blood relatives Manjikyu Sharingan, condense the extreme yin release chakra, and obtain the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan that is superior to ordinary Manjikyu Sharingan. Shinichi had always thought that Uchiha Sharingan was just a pair of Manjikyu Sharingan. Now, after listening to Jishui's words, he realized that Uchiha Sharingan was actually stronger than his own. Jishui continued, "But what Senpai and I didn't expect was that even with the help of Flame's eternal Manjikyu Sharingan, I still couldn't suppress the primeval cells that were implanted in my body and let those cells go berserk in my body." To this day, Jishui has a chill when he recalled the scene of the primeval cells going berserk in his body. Itachi also experienced it personally, so he added, "At that time, the berserk primeval cells absorbed Brother Jishui's chakra, turned into a big tree, broke through the laboratory, and rushed to the ground." Shinichi asked with a stiff face, "What happened then?" "Phew." Gently exhaling, Jishui said, "Fortunately, there was Senpai and Itachi to suppress those crazy trees outside, and the power of Flame's eternal Manjikyu Sharingan is far superior to my own Manjikyu Sharingan. So at the last moment, I barely survived. Is it really that dangerous?" Pausing for a moment, Zen subconsciously covered his eyes with his hand and said, "You almost died using the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan, and my Manjikyu Sharingan's pupillary power has long been depleted. Wouldn't the success rate of my Manjikyu Sharingan be lower than yours?" Without waiting for Jishui to speak, Itachi nodded calmly. "Well, in theory, the success rate of our surgery should be much lower than Brother Jishui's." At this time, Shinichi asked Jishui with some suspicion, "Did Flame really lend his eternal Manjikyu Sharingan to you?" Even an ordinary Uchiha Sharingan is his most precious thing, not to mention a pair of eternal Manjikyu Sharingan that is almost unique in the shinobi world. Therefore, it is difficult for Shinichi to imagine that Uchiha Sharingan would lend his eternal Manjikyu Sharingan to Jishuei for such a dangerous transplant surgery. One must know that if the transplant surgery fails, Jishuei's whole body will be swallowed by the wildly growing trees. At that time, even if the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan can be rescued, no one can guarantee that the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan will not be damaged in the process. Putting himself in Shurshuei's shoes, Shinichi doesn't have the courage to lend his Manjikyu Sharingan. Jishuei said, "Flame can be trusted." Itachi also echoed, "Well, Hain-senpai is an elder of the organization, and she takes good care of us." "Hey, don't say like she's very old. That guy should not be as old as me." After a pause, Shinichi pondered, "Since that freak is willing to lend her eternal Manjikyu Sharingan, why don't we also borrow her eternal Manjikyu Sharingan? At worst, we will owe her a favor." Shinichi is still very confident in himself. He feels that Jishuei can survive the surgery smoothly with the help of Flame's eternal Manjikyu Sharingan. Then he can also survive the surgery smoothly with the help of eternal Manjikyu Sharingan. Jishuei said, "Don't think too much. Senpai should have an arrangement." After saying that, the three of them came to the old laboratory of Hyojin in the Forest of Death. After activating the mechanism in the tree hole, the three of them passed through the passage and came to the underground laboratory. At this time, they found that Hyojin was already waiting in the laboratory, and beside Hyojin, there was a figure wearing a black cloak of Amitsukami and a sun pattern mask. "Is that Flame?" Shinichi, who was thinking of borrowing the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan from Uchiha Sharingan, was happy at first, but then immediately frowned, because he has already perceived that the figure standing quietly beside Hyojin is not the Uchiha Sharingan he knows, but a stranger with a chakra that he instinctively fears. Jishuei also looked at the figure standing beside Hyojin and asked curiously, "Senpai, who is she?" Hyojin chuckled and said, "Let me introduce her to you. She's a new member of Amitsukami, codenamed Sun God, and she's also my assistant in this transplant operation." Sun God. The three of them looked at the new member in front of them with the codename Kamikaze. Here's the first update, asking for recommendation votes. It seems that after 12 o'clock tonight, the double monthly vote activity will start. Please vote after 12 o'clock, please. Oh, please. Chapter 8:11. Obviously, the new member of Amitsukami, who was named by Hyojin as Young God, was not someone else but Xiang Lin, who had just successfully integrated the Rinnegan a few days ago. For Xiang Lin, who has the eyes of the immortals, the codename Young God is appropriate. After successfully integrating the Rinnegan, Hyojin made a comprehensive examination of Xiang Lin's body and the newly born Rinnegan in her eye sockets. Perhaps because of the baptism of the power of the universe, Xiang Lin's physique has been significantly improved than before. Although the Yang release chakra contained in her body is not as good as the almost extreme Yang release chakra contained in the first generation cells, compared to before, the quality improvement is still very obvious. And it seems that because of the successful integration of the Rinnegan, the resistance of this newly born Rinnegan to Xiang Lin's body was much lighter than Hyojin expected. He didn't have time to use many means to suppress the Rinnegan, and the Rinnegan obediently accepted the fact that Xiang Lin was its master. However, he doesn't know whether it was because Xiang Lin was still young or because the Rinnegan had just been born. In short, Xiang Lin tried many times but found that she could only use the low-intensity Shinra Tensei and Wanxiang Tensei at present. In terms of absorbing chakra, she could only absorb it in close contact. Powerful sealing techniques like Chibaku Tensei and Samsara Tensei, which can perfectly resurrect the dead, Xiang Lin is still unable to use them at present. As for the higher level, such as the pupil technique contained in Madara Uchiha's Rinnegan eyes, and the pupil technique contained in Sasuke's 6 Tomo Rinnegan eyes in the original space and time, there is not even a shadow of it. In this regard, Hyojin is not in a hurry. After all, Nagato has obtained Madara Uchiha's Rinnegan for more than 10 years, and it took him a little bit of time to explore and develop the abilities contained in the Rinnegan eyes. Xiangli had only obtained the reincarnation eyes for a few days, and she herself was only a little over 10 years old. She was just a child that hadn't grown up yet, so it was normal for her to temporarily be unable to use the full power of the reincarnation eyes. Shinichi pursed his lips. I thought it was a flame. Flame? Slightly stunned, Hyojin casually asked back. Today is the surgery to transplant the first-generation cells for you and Itachi. What about Guanyin? Shinichi immediately showed a flattering smile and leaned in front of Hyojin. Boss, I heard that this kind of transplant is very dangerous. Can you help me borrow the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan from Flame? Don't worry, I'll definitely return this favor in the future. Itachi, who looked calm on the surface, also looked at Hyojin. Compare with Shinichi, who only listened to the oral description. As a person who experienced it, he knew more about what Jishui had experienced in the operation of transplanting the first-generation cells, so he knew far more about the danger of this transplant than Shinichi. Hyojin smiled and said, Don't worry, I already have other arrangements. There is no need to bother to replace the Sharingan. Shinichi asked curiously, What is the success rate of the operation? After thinking about it, Hyojin replied, Probably 30% to 40%. Shinichi said with a sad face, Not even 50%? Hyojin explained with a smile, Although the success rate of the operation has not improved qualitatively, but with the young god, even if the operation fails, you can still survive, so don't worry about it. The eyes of the three people once again turned to Xiangli, who was standing quietly beside Hyojin. Although Xiangli was only a little over 10 years old, because she was wearing the Type 2 biological armor, her current height and body shape were almost equivalent to a normal girl of 17 or 18 years old. And the Type 2 biological armor on her body was actually not the previous one. The previous one, because it opened the overload mode twice when fusing with the Rinnegan, its internal structure and cell tissues were irreversible damage. So after the birth of the Rinnegan, it successfully retired. Therefore, at this time, Xiangli was actually wearing a brand new Type 2 biological armor that Hyojin spent a lot of money to replicate. Under the sun pattern mask, Xiangli also blinked her eyes, curiously looking at the three Uchiha family kaleidoscopes in front of her. Before coming here, Hyojin briefly introduced some of the situation of Amitsukami to her, so she knew that the three Uchiha family kaleidoscopes in front of her were all members of Amitsukami, and they were Hyojin's right-hand men. However, because she didn't understand anything, Hyojin specifically told her to listen more and talk less when meeting other members of Amitsukami. Therefore, Xiangli, who has always been lively, had a lot of things to say, want to ask, but because of Hyojin's previous instructions, she had to hold back. Xiangli was having a hard time holding back her words. But on the other side, Jishui and the others saw that Xiangli didn't say a word from beginning to end. It seemed that she didn't have any intention of talking to them, so they all felt strange. Shinichi stared at Xiangli while muttering, Anyhow, we are all members of Amitsukami. Don't you even want to say hello? Xiangli immediately felt conflicted. She is struggling whether she should wave to them, shake hands with them one by one, or just nod at them from a distance. She's only 10 years old, so she still doesn't know how to communicate with these strong shinobi in front of her. Since she was wearing the Type 2 biological armor, even though Xianglin's inner turmoil was reflected to her body, it was blocked by the external biological armor. Therefore, in Shinichi's eyes, it seemed like Xianglin was indifferent and ignored what he said just now. Not to mention Shinichi, who was secretly annoyed. Even Jishui and Itachi had an arrogant impression of Xiangli. Hyojin naturally saw all of this, but he just smiled and didn't explain anything. Xiangli, who now has the Rinnegan, is the last card he prepared for himself, so he doesn't want Xiangli to have too much entanglement with other members of Amitsukami. If he didn't need Xiangli's Rinnegan ability this time, he wouldn't have brought her out. Okay, Jishui, you're responsible for guarding the ground. Itachi, Shinichi, the two of you come with me. After saying a few words, Hyojin walked towards the prepared operating room. Yes, Jishui nodded respectfully, turned around, and walked out. For him, Hyojin is not only the leader of Amatsukami, but also the fifth Naruto, who is about to ascend to the position of Naruto. He admires and looks up to him. At this time, Shinichi, who followed Hyojin into the operating room, curiously sensed Xiang Li, and after noticing a trace of strangeness, he subconsciously moved closer and discovered that Xiang Li's eyes under the sun pattern mask were exactly the same as Nagato, the leader of Akatsuki. Rinnegan. Almost instantly, Shinichi retreated far away, and while warning loudly, he was on full alert. The second chapter is here. There should be a third chapter later. Please vote. Chapter 8-12. With Shinichi's shock, Jishui and Itachi also became alert. At this time, Shinichi stared at Xiang Lin in front of him and shouted, "Hey, how come you have a Rinnegan? Are you Nagato?" "No. Are you Nagato's new 6 paths of pain?" For Shinichi, who joined the Akatsuki organization as a spy, the Rinnegan eyes in Nagato's eyes were a nightmare hidden deep in his heart. God knows how many nights Shinichi dreamed that his identity as a spy was exposed, and he died tragically in the hands of Nagato. So when he saw the Rinnegan eyes in Xianglin's eyes, he had a stress reaction. Moreover, he knew that the eyes in the 6 paths of pain created by Nagato would all show the appearance of the Rinnegan eyes, so he quickly analyzed the situation in his mind. Xianglin was directly stunned and didn't know what to do. However, her emotional fluctuations and physical tension were all covered up by the Type 2 biological armor, so her external performance was extremely indifferent, as if she didn't care about Shinichi's abnormal movements at all. And in the eyes of Shinichi, this indifference was almost exactly the same as that of Nagato, who claimed to be a god. Jishui and Itachi were also surprised at this time. Although the two of them didn't join the Akatsuki organization like Shinichi and had close contact with Nagato, in several confrontations with the Akatsuki organization, they had seen Nagato from a distance, and they had seen the Rinnegan eyes in Nagato's eyes. Because of Hyojin, the two of them knew far more about the Rinnegan eyes than ordinary people. They knew that the Rinnegan eyes were the eyes once owned by the legendary 6 Paths of Pain, so when they learned that the young god had a pair of Rinnegan eyes, they were no less surprised than Shinichi. However, they instinctively believed in Hyojin and didn't think that Nagato had the ability to sneak under Hyojin's eyes, so their reaction was not as big as Shinichi's. Hyojin smiled and said, "Don't worry, the young god is not Nagato, nor is it the 6 Paths of Pain created by Nagato." After listening to Hyojin's explanation, Shinichi also reacted. If the young god in front of him was really the leader of the Akatsuki organization, Nagato, then he should have been killed by Hyojin a long time ago. Phew! After letting out a sigh of relief, Shinichi asked, "Boss, what about her eyes?" Hyojin nodded gently and said, "Well, the young god also has a pair of Rinnegan eyes, just like Nagato." Xianglin finally found the opportunity and nodded in agreement with Hyojin. It really is the Rinnegan eyes. The 3 Uchiha who have the Manjikyu Sharingan were shocked at this moment. The reason why the Akatsuki organization can threaten the entire shinobi world is actually because of the pair of Rinnegan eyes in Nagato's eye sockets, which is known as the eyes of the sage. So in the hearts of these 3 people, they have always believed that there is only one pair of Rinnegan eyes. Now that they suddenly saw a second pair of Rinnegan eyes, and the other party is also a member of the same organization, the surprise and shock in their hearts can be imagined. Seeing Jishui, Itachi, and Shinichi look like they've seen a ghost, Hyojin smiled and said, "Who told you that there's only one pair of Rinnegan eyes in the shinobi world?" "Well, we'll talk about the Rinnegan later. Jishui, you go outside and be on guard. Itachi, Shinichi, don't just stand there, come with me." After saying that, Hyojin walked into the operating room, and Xianglin followed him. No wonder he is so arrogant and ignored us. It turns out that he's a strong person with the Rinnegan eyes. After a pause, Shinichi asked Jishui and Itachi next to him, "Is this the first time you two have seen each other?" "Yes." Jishui and Itachi nodded in unison. They had never even heard of the code name Young God before, let alone seen it. As Shinichi followed Hyojin, he muttered to himself, I don't know where the boss found this monster. Hey, but with such a monster as an accomplice, I feel much more at ease. When he thought that the young god in front of him was a strong person at the same level as Nagato, the leader of the Akatsuki organization, Shinichi didn't have any resistance to the arrogance shown by the young god before. Not only him, but even Jishuei and Itachi also showed understanding and naturally accepted the arrogance of the young god. Perhaps in the eyes of Uchiha, arrogance was the privilege of the strong. After a while, Itachi and Shinichi arrived at the operating room. Looking at the cold instruments that filled the entire operating room, Shinichi was a little scared and asked weakly, Boss, do you really not need to worry? You talk too much. After glaring at Shinichi, Hyojin pointed to the two operating tables in front of him and said, Lie down on them. Itachi took a deep breath and lay down on the operating table without saying a word. Seeing this, Shinichi had to climb to the operating table obediently. While preparing the fusion solution, Hyojin said, The young god can only guarantee that the rampaging primordial cells will not kill you, but whether you can subdue the primordial cells or not depends on your own ability. Shinichi curled his lips and said, If Jishuei can do it, I can do it. Itachi still didn't say anything, just nodded slightly. Hyojin glanced at Itachi and didn't say anything. In fact, Itachi's only option is to transplant the primordial cells, because unlike Jishuei and Shinichi, Itachi not only has a blood relative who is still alive, but coincidentally, one of his blood relatives has also awakened the Manjikyu Sharingan. And this person is naturally Itachi's father, Uchiha Fuyue. Therefore, Itachi actually has another option. That is to seize his father Fuyue's Manjikyu Sharingan and fuse it into a pair of eternal Manjikyu Sharingan. Seeing Itachi's worried look, Hyojin guessed that Itachi must have considered this option. As Hyojin expected, Itachi did consider this option. Because the current situation of the village is very clear, the Uchiha clan is bound to have no chance to inherit the position of the great Naruto. And if the Uchiha clan loses the vote of confidence and loses the position of great Naruto, then the probability of his father, who has been aroused with ambition, launching a rebellion is extremely high. At that time, whether it is the fate of his father Uchiha Fuyue or the fate of the Uchiha clan, I am afraid that it will be very tragic. Therefore, in Itachi's view, instead of letting his father bear the infamy of a rebel and then die in the hands of the village, it is better to end it himself, so that at least his father's reputation can be preserved and his younger brother Uchiha Sasuke can be saved. If it were not for Hyojin's existence, Itachi is afraid that he would have made up his mind by now. However, because of Hyojin, he believed that no matter how complicated the situation was, no matter how difficult the problem, Hyojin would definitely have a way to solve it. So he resolutely chose the option of transplanting the primordial cells, which may be life-threatening. And if there is a day when father and son really go against each other in the future, he will not covet his father's pair of Manjikyu Sharingan. He will save his father's eyes and leave them to his younger brother who may need them in the future. Third update, asking for monthly votes. Chapter 813. Thud Thud. Hyojin looked at the light and flicked the syringe in his hand with his finger, squeezing out the bubbles in the syringe one by one. Shinichi, who was lying on the operating table, listened to the sound of Hyojin preparing the equipment and said weakly, Boss, please, don't make such a sound. Shut up. Hyojin reprimanded Shinichi angrily. He really did not realize that Shinichi, who looked reckless, was actually afraid of surgery. Compared to Shinichi, Itachi silently adjusted his state of mind. Jishuei was on guard outside the operating theater, and Hyojin and the young god were inside the operating theater. For Itachi, he could let go of all his guard and disguise at this moment and focus on dealing with the first-generation cells. Soon, Hyojin prepared all the surgical equipment. Then, he connected the equipment to display the physical data for Itachi and Shinichi while describing the surgical process. First, I'll inject the fusion fluid into the two of you. Then, when the fusion fluid takes effect, I'll implant a small part of the most active first-generation cell tissue into your bodies. Remember, half an hour before the fusion fluid takes effect is the best time for you to suppress the first-generation cells that have been implanted in your bodies. You must grasp it well. Shinichi asked carefully, What if we can't suppress the implanted first-generation cells within half an hour of the fusion fluid taking effect? Hyojin shrugged. Then the transplant surgery will most likely fail. Shinichi squeezed out a smile. Got it. Seeing that not only Shinichi, but even Itachi was a little nervous, Hyojin said calmly, Don't feel too burdened. Failure is actually very normal. In my estimation, you'll be considered very lucky if you can succeed within 3 surgeries. After comforting the two of them, Hyojin did not delay any further and immediately began the transplant surgery. For the current Hyojin, injecting fusion fluid and transplanting cell tissues were all operations that he could easily complete with his eyes closed. Therefore, before Itachi and Shinichi could feel anything, he had already completed all the operations in one go. Next, you'll feel your blood vessels swell and your heart rate increase. But don't worry, these are all normal reactions after the injection of fusion fluid. Remember, only your Manjikyu Sharingan can suppress the Hashirama cells. Don't worry about the depletion of your eye power. The process of using your eye power to suppress the first-generation cells is actually the fusion process of Yin escape chakra and Yang escape chakra. The depletion of your eye power will become the boundless nature force in the future to nourish your body. So, just do it. Under the guidance of Hyojin, Itachi, and Shinichi, who were lying on the operating table, simultaneously activated the Manjikyu Sharingan. Looking at the demonic Manjikyu Sharingan in Itachi and Shinichi's eye sockets, Xianglin, who was on standby, was amazed. Although she had transplanted the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan, she had never used this kind of legendary eye in the ninja world. Just as Xianglin was looking curiously with her Rinnegan, she keenly discovered that whether it was Itachi or Shinichi, there seemed to be something wriggling under their skin. Soon, Itachi and Shinichi both let out painful wails. As the possessors of the Manjikyu Sharingan who had felt pain before, Itachi and Shinichi's ability to endure pain was unquestionable. But even so, the two of them still cried out in pain at the same time, showing how much pain they were suffering at the moment. Xianglin was shocked and unconsciously took 2 steps back. On the other hand, Hyojin's face was as calm as water, quietly staring at the 2 people on the operating table, as if he didn't hear the wailing at all. 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 30 minutes, time passed bit by bit, and in the blink of an eye, the first half an hour of the strongest effect of the fusion liquid had passed. On the operating table, Itachi and Shinichi were still wailing intermittently, sometimes rolling left and right, sometimes curling up into a ball, as if they had lost their minds and will. Xianglin quickly asked, Sir, are they okay? Hyojin narrowed his eyes slightly. Wait a little longer. Even if the fusion liquid has been improved several times, how much effect can it play in the process of suppressing the first-generation cells? Hyojin can't say. So, in the final analysis, whether it can suppress the first-generation cells or not still depends on Itachi and Shinichi's own willpower. At this moment, Hyojin's brows suddenly wrinkled. He, who had opened the Tenseigan, had insight into the signs of the first-generation cells in Itachi's body going berserk. Without any hesitation, Hyojin said to Xianglin, quickly absorb the Yang release chakra in his body. Xianglin, who had long been prepared, quickly pressed her hands on Itachi's chest where the first-generation cells were transplanted, fully activated her Rinnegan ability, and absorbed the raging Yang release chakra in Itachi's body. The reason why Hyojin decisively ordered Xianglin to take action at the first sign was that with Xianglin's current level, it was okay to only absorb the Yang release chakra. But if the Yang release chakra in Itachi's body completely went berserk and combined with the water attribute chakra and the earth attribute chakra to form the wood release chakra, it was hard to say whether the berserk would absorb Xianglin's chakra or xianglin, would absorb the wood release chakra. Therefore, it is necessary to extract the yang release chakra in Itachi's body before it turns into wood release chakra, and only in this way can Itachi not be swallowed by the berserk wood release. Soon, in the body of Shinichi on the side, there were also signs of yang release chakra going berserk. The same here. Hurry up! Hyojin immediately issued an order to Xianglin. The inexperienced Xianglin suddenly panicked, hurriedly replaced her hand, and pressed it on Shinichi's chest, absorbing the yang release chakra raging in Shinichi's body. Seeing this scene, Hyojin's brows also wrinkled more and more tightly. He expected that things would not go smoothly, but he did not expect that neither Itachi nor Shinichi would succeed. One must know that there are almost no mediocre people who can awaken the Manjikyu Sharingan. All of them are geniuses, so relatively speaking, the probability of Itachi and Shinichi successfully suppressing the Hashirama cells should be far higher than the average Uchiha. His heart sank, and Hyojin suddenly made a decision. He stretched out his hand and pressed it on Itachi's and Shinichi's foreheads, and then activated his Tenseigan's pupil power. Just like how Sasuke invaded Naruto's soul world in the original time and space, he invaded Itachi and Shinichi's soul world respectively. After entering the two soul worlds respectively, Hyojin didn't do anything. He just asked the two exhausted people lying in their respective soul worlds faintly, "Is this all you've got?" In their respective soul worlds, Itachi and Shinichi raised their heads almost at the same time, looking at Hyojin, who was descending like a light. "I've stayed up all night, begging for monthly votes. Thank you, everyone." Chapter 814. I've stayed up all night to finish the 4th chapter. I don't ask for anything else, just for your monthly votes. Thank you, everyone. The 4th chapter of Naruto's World in the Eyes of Reincarnation has been updated, asking for monthly votes. Currently typing, please wait a moment. After the content is updated, please refresh the page to get the latest update. Chapter 815. In the dim soul world of Itachi and Shinichi, Hyojin's arrival is like a beam of light falling from the sky, piercing the curtain and dispelling the darkness. Senpai. In Itachi's soul world, Itachi looked up at Hyojin and looked at the beam of light. Hyojin still didn't move, just quietly looked at Itachi. A touch of disappointment appeared on his face. "Is this your belief to protect the family and the village? Is this all you've got?" Itachi said bitterly. "I'm sorry. I can't suppress the Hashirama chakra. It's too strong." Hyojin's face turned cold. This is the first time he saw Itachi who would be afraid like ordinary people and retreat like ordinary people. "It's rare. You also know how to admit defeat." After a pause, the corner of Hyojin's mouth raised. "Since you can't stand this test, then I can only let Sasuke come. Maybe he can endure more hardships than you." Itachi's whole body shook when he heard this, as if he was struck by lightning. With the talent Sasuke has shown so far, Itachi firmly believes that Sasuke will be able to awaken Manjikyu Sharingan in the future, and his family, including his father Uchiha Fuyue, has a total of 3 pairs of Manjikyu Sharingan. In other words, his family can only fuse a pair of eternal Manjikyu Sharingan at most. If Itachi can't suppress the Hashirama chakra, then he can only choose the easy option and leave this difficult choice to his brother Sasuke. "No, I must not fail." At the thought that if he fails, his brother Sasuke will suffer this unbearable pain, Itachi rekindled his fighting spirit. In Shinichi's soul world, Shinichi, who is also exhausted, also looked up at Hyojin, who was bathed in the light, and teased, "Boss, you are so dazzling. Do you still have the strength to joke?" Hyojin smiled and said, "Don't pretend to be dead on the ground." Shinichi shook his head tiredly. "It's too hard for me." Hyojin said casually, "Oh, it turns out that you are so magnanimous. If that's the case, then forget it." Shinichi looked at Hyojin, and a trace of doubt flashed through his tired eyes. He didn't know why Hyojin suddenly praised him for being magnanimous. He thought that he had nothing to do with magnanimity. If you can't suppress the first-generation cells, you won't be able to recover your eye ability. Without eye ability, what difference is there between you and a piece of trash? Curling his lips, Hyojin continued. Since you're willing to be a cripple, it's obvious that you've magnanimously let go of the grudge against Uchiha Kurumi. But that's normal. You're a woman, after all. It's been so long. Who would still care about it? After a bitter laugh, Shinichi struggled to get up from the ground. Do you have to be so heart-wrenching? Hyojin didn't say anything. He just quietly looked at Shinichi, who was getting up from the ground. Shinichi put his hands on his knees. Panting, he complained, "Boss, didn't you say that there were still many chances?" I remember clearly that you said it would be lucky to succeed within 3 times. Why don't we try again next time? I'm not ready this time, Hyojin said coldly. If you have this mentality, you won't succeed even if you try 30 or 300 times. The yang release chakra in the first-generation cells represented the ultimate life force. Only the ultimate soul force, which was the Sharingan's eye ability, could suppress it. Therefore, in this game, willpower was the key. Once there was a way out, and he wanted to retreat, then no matter how many times he tried, the result would be the same. Because the strength of willpower would directly affect the strength of the eye ability. With a mortal's body, it was impossible to suppress the first-generation cells if he didn't have an indomitable will to die. Shinichi was silent for a moment and said calmly, "I'll try my best." Hyojin turned around and said lightly, "I'll wait for you outside. Don't let me see you embarrassed again." After that, Hyojin disappeared directly from Shinichi's soul world. Along with it, the dazzling light that had dispelled all the darkness disappeared. Shinichi's face darkened. He tried his best to chase in the direction where the light disappeared in the operating room. "Hey, what's going on?" Xiang Lin, who was using the ability of the reincarnation eye to absorb the raging yang release chakra in Itachi and Shinichi's bodies, suddenly found that the previously violent and disorderly yang release chakra in their bodies had suddenly become orderly. At this time, Hyojin, who had left the soul world of the 2 people, ordered Xiang Lin stop. But Xiang Lin was a little hesitant. She was very worried that if she stopped, the yang release chakra in Itachi and Shinichi's bodies would immediately go out of control. "Do it." Hyojin didn't explain. Seeing Hyojin insist, Xiang Lin no longer hesitated. She immediately stopped absorbing the yang release chakra in their bodies. Hyojin injected a dose of fusion fluid into Itachi and Shinichi again. Although injecting 2 tubes of fusion fluid consecutively would cause a great burden on their bodies, Hyojin couldn't care so much at this time. At this time, Hyojin had already realized that it was actually a major mistake to arrange a retreat path for Itachi and Shinichi before the operation. This was because once a person had a retreat path, it would be easier for them to choose to give up, which was precisely the taboo of suppressing the first-generation cells. This was because the first-generation cells were known for their extraordinary vitality and toughness. In order to suppress them, one must have the same amazing toughness and indomitable willpower. Therefore, once Itachi and Shinichi failed this time, they would have a psychological shadow. Then, the probability of success in the future would be infinitely reduced. Therefore, they must succeed this time. Soon, the second tube of fusion fluid began to take effect. Unlike before, this time, Itachi and Shinichi on the operating table were very quiet. Except for the occasional ferocious expression on their faces, it was as if they were just closing their eyes and taking a nap. Hyojin and Xiang Lin, who had the Tenseigan and Rinnegan, were naturally very clear that Itachi and Shinichi were fighting a life-and-death battle with the first-generation cells at this moment. This could be seen from the constantly undulating and wriggling granulation under their skin. Xiang Lin said in surprise, "Sir, they seem to have found the trick to suppress the first-generation cells." Hyojin nodded with a satisfied smile on his face. From the current situation, Itachi and Shinichi had begun to try to suppress the first-generation cells with the effect of the second tube of fusion fluid. After pondering for a moment, Hyojin ordered Xiang Lin, transfer the previously absorbed yang released chakra to them again. Xianglin's previous behavior belonged to external interference. Therefore, when Itachi and Shinichi gradually mastered the trick to suppress the first-generation cells, Hyojin naturally wanted to eliminate this external interference so that the transplant operation could achieve the best effect. Here's the first update, asking for monthly votes. Chapter 8:16. As Xianglin returned the absorbed yang chakra to Itachi and Shinichi on the operating table one by one, the confrontation between the yin chakra and the yang chakra in their bodies suddenly became fierce. The flesh under the skin of the two people was squirming violently at a speed that was almost visible to the naked eye. At the same time, the temperature, heartbeat, blood pressure, and other physical signs of the two people also became abnormal one after another. The instruments monitoring the two people's physical signs were constantly beeping in the operating room. Xianglin asked worriedly, "My lord, can they hold on? Do you want me to absorb the yang chakra again?" Hyojin didn't say anything and just shook his head. In his opinion, once Itachi and Shinichi made up their minds and figured out the technique to suppress the yang chakra, it was only a matter of time before they fused with the first-generation cells. Sure enough, as Hyojin expected, with the passage of time, Itachi and Shinichi's physical signs gradually returned to normal, and the harsh instrument warning gradually subsided. There is no doubt that Uchiha is a ninja who is good at creating miracles, especially Itachi and Shinichi, who have awakened the Manjikyu Sharingan. Uchiha, as long as there is enough stimulation, they can often do things that are beyond the imagination of ordinary people. So when Hyuga Kuroda invaded their soul world and used words to dispel their retreat, not only did there will not be overwhelmed by the Hashirama cells, but the more they fought, the braver they became. In the fierce confrontation, the Manjikyu Sharingan in their eye sockets also became more and more dazzling, as if it was shining with a magnificent light. This is a kind of light that is different from the cold and evil light in the past. Xianglin hurriedly said, "My lord, I feel it. It's the power of the universe." For Xianglin, who contains a lot of the power of the universe in her body, this feeling is too familiar, so she noticed it in an instant. Hyojin chuckled and nodded. Yes, they succeeded. Only when yin release chakra and yang release chakra have a fusion of their nature can they give birth to the power of omniscience, which represents the unity of yin and yang. Therefore, when the aura of the two Manjikyu Sharingan changed and the power of omniscience appeared in their bodies, it means that the two of them have successfully fused with the Hashirama cells implanted in their bodies. Of course, compared to the boundless nature force contained in Xiang Li's reincarnation eye, the two of them were far inferior in both quality and quantity. Glancing at Xianglin, whose breathing was a little chaotic, Hyojin said, "All right, go to the side and rest for a while. Leave the rest to them." Xiangli nodded and obediently retreated to the side. She had only possessed the Rinnegan for a few days, and being dragged here by Hyojin was like forcing a duck onto a perch. Therefore, after using the ability of the Rinnegan a few times, her body felt a little strained. A moment later, Itachi and Shinichi woke up one after another on the operating table. Itachi sat up and murmured, "Is it a success?" On the side, Shinichi directly used the Manjikyu Sharingan's pupil technique, House of Time, to go back in time for a short period of time, then laughed and said, "Great, my pupillary powers have recovered, and my vision has also recovered." Hyojin immediately scolded, "Idiot, don't mess around. Your current physical condition is not stable. Don't use the Manjikyu Sharingan's pupil technique indiscriminately." Although Hyojin's fusion liquid has been improved, and the effect is much stronger than the one Jishui used last time, but the period of adaptation after the surgery is inevitable. Shinichi scratched his head and smiled, "I know." After confirming that his vision and pupillary powers have not only recovered, but also slightly improved compared to the previous peak, Itachi turned over and got off the operating table, bowed respectfully to Hyojin, and said sincerely, Sorry for making you worry." For a moment, Itachi was really discouraged and retreated. It was Hyojin who came like the light of hope, dispelling the darkness surrounding him. At that moment, his heart gained unprecedented peace, as if he had a pillar of support. Hyojin waved his hand indifferently. Immediately afterward, Itachi came in front of Xianglin and bowed. "Thank you very much." Although Itachi was unconscious most of the time during the operation, he could clearly feel that someone had extracted the yang release chakra that was raging in his body at the critical moment, and among the several people present, there is no doubt that only the yang god that Hyojin had specially found as a surgical assistant can do this. Being called you by Itachi, Xianglin, who was only 10 years old, was startled and didn't know how to respond for a while. Itachi seemed to be accustomed to Xianglin's indifference and did not wait for Xianglin's response. After thanking Xianglin, he tactfully retreated. Although Shinichi was not as formal as Itachi, he also thanked Xianglin and thought to himself, "This guy obviously saved me in Itachi, but he is not arrogant at all. It seems that he's a good person, but he is too cold, just as difficult to deal with as Nagato. Don't tell me that people with the eye of reincarnation are all like this." While packing up the surgical equipment, Hyojin told Itachi and Shinichi it is best not to use the ability of Sharingan for 3 days. "Okay." Itachi and Shinichi quickly responded. For Jutsu, Kekkei Genkai ninjas, there is nothing more painful than the decline of vision, so a short 3-day adaptation period is nothing for them. What's more, the entire village has been immersed in the recent election of Godai Naruto, so they don't need Sharingan. After a simple cleaning up, Hyojin led everyone out of the underground laboratory. Seeing everyone coming up, Jishui, who was on guard on the ground, quickly greeted them. "Kuroto-san, did it go well?" Hyojin replied, "It went well." Shinichi laughed loudly. "Jishui, what are you worried about? How could this kind of operation be difficult for me and Itachi?" Jishui ignored Shinichi's complacency and secretly breathed a sigh of relief. Hyojin looked at the sky and said to the three, "Well, the situation in the village is very tense during this time. You don't need to stay here any longer. Go back to your Uchiha clan as soon as possible." "Yes." The three of them bowed to Hyojin in unison, then used the body flicker technique at the same time and disappeared in place. At this time, Xianglin, who has been silent all this time, finally said, "Kuroto-san, these seniors of the Uchiha clan seem to be very easy to get along with. In the Uchiha clan, they are considered to be quite different." With a smile, Hyojin glanced at the Rinnegan in Xianglin's eye sockets and joked, "In fact, as long as you are strong enough, the Uchiha clan are still very easy to deal with." The arrogance of the Uchiha clan makes others have a communication threshold when interacting with them, and once they have the strength to cross this communication threshold, they will find that most of the Uchiha clan can communicate with them normally. On the other side, among the 3 people who returned to the clan, Shinichi suddenly said, "That young god is very strong. I am afraid that his strength is not below Nagato." The second update is here. Asking for recommendation votes, monthly votes. Chapter 817. After hearing Shinichi's words, Jishui and Itachi, who were traveling with him, immediately cast inquiring gazes at him. Shinichi narrowed his eyes slightly and explained in a deep voice, "In the operating room, just now, I secretly sensed the yang spirit, but for some reason, I couldn't sense any useful information. There seems to be a layer of something on the surface of her body, completely isolating my perception. This kind of thing has never happened to Nagato." Jishui and Itachi were shocked when they heard this. Both of them knew very well that Shinichi's perception ability was undoubtedly the strongest in the current Uchiha clan, even far surpassing them, who were also Kaleidoscope Uchiha. Because of this, they trusted Shinichi's judgment in this regard. At this time, Shinichi looked back a little awkwardly and subconsciously lowered his voice. "Moreover, the other party's perception ability is stronger than mine. No, compared to her, I'm not on the same level at all," seeing that Shinichi seemed to be a little uneasy. Jishui asked curiously, "What's wrong with you?" Shinichi looked a little embarrassed. "I can feel that we're still in her perception. She's watching us." Itachi was stunned for a moment, and then said, "That's impossible, unless she's been following us all the time." At this time, the three of them had left the Forest of Death and entered the residential area of the village. They were at least dozens of kilometers away from the underground laboratory at the edge of the Forest of Death. From such a long distance, as far as Itachi knows, there is no perceptual ninja that can perceive from such a long distance. Jishui turned around to confirm and said, "We shouldn't be being followed." Shinichi said with a bitter face, "You two guys, don't doubt my perception ability. You may not feel it, but I feel like there's a needle on my back. This feeling is like she's been watching me from behind." Jishui was a little confused. How is that possible? He searched through his memories, but he couldn't find a ninjutsu or secret technique that matched this ability. This was because it was impossible to sense something from such a long distance, unless it was like the grease girls who used the parasitic bugs to transmit chakra information along the way. "If I knew why, I wouldn't be so scared." Curling his lips, Shinichi continued, "I wonder where the boss recruited these monsters from." The more Shinichi understood Amatsukumi's strength, the more apprehensive he became. Itachi said calmly, "Since Senior recruited her into the organization, she must be trustworthy." In the underground laboratory, Itachi keenly noticed the gaze of the young god. Most of the time, it was on Hyojin. He was very familiar with that kind of gaze, because when he looked at Hyojin, it was the same gaze. Jishui nodded in agreement. "Well, instead of worrying about these things that we shouldn't worry about, it's better to think about how to deal with the troubles in the family." Shinichi replied casually, "Tisk, what's there to worry about in the family? No matter from which point of view, the boss is the most suitable choice to be the fifth generation." Jishui and Itachi nodded in unison. In their opinion, Hyojin was the most suitable person to be Naruto in the whole village. Only a strong person like Hyojin could become Naruto, and it was possible to resolve the conflict between the Uchiha clan and the village. In the Forest of Death, Xianglin opened her eyes and said, "Sir, they have safely returned to the land of the Uchiha clan." "Is that so?" Hyojin smiled. In addition to her special healing physique, there was another commendable thing about Xianglin. That was, she had mastered the Kagura Mind Eye, which was the most accurate and wide-range perceptual ninjutsu in the ninja world. It could be said that Xianglin was a human-shaped radar. In the original time and space, Sasuke relied on Xianglin to lock on the position of Danzo. At that time, if Sasuke was patient enough, he could easily find a chance to ambush Danzo alone. However, at that time, Sasuke was in the most serious stage of Chinibyu. After locking on the trace of Danzo, he rushed into the scene of the five Kage's assembly regardless of the occasion, dragging the entire Eagle team down to the four generations laying. In the end, if it wasn't for Obsidian's timely rescue, he would have died inexplicably in the hands of Danzo's dust release. And now, with the help of the Rinnegan, Xianglin's Kagura Mind Eye has also been strengthened to a certain extent. At the age of 10, she can already cover the entire Konoha village with her perception, and this perception is invisible and invisible. Only Uchiha Shinichi, who is a top-notch perception-type ninja in the shinobi world, and who has been in close contact with Xianglin, can vaguely feel it. At noon the next day, Kakashi visited Hyojin alone. After welcoming Kakashi into the house, Hyojin asked, "How are your injuries?" Kakashi replied, "After the careful treatment of Tsunade-sama, I'm much better." Under normal circumstances, Kakashi's injuries would take at least 2 to 3 months of treatment to heal. But now, only half a month later, he can already move freely. It can be seen that Tsunade has really put a lot of effort into his body during this time. Pouring a cup of tea for Kakashi, Hyojin smiled and said, "You just recovered from your injuries, and you came to visit me. There should be something wrong, right?" Kakashi first took a sip of tea, and then sincerely said, "Kuroto, thank you." Hyojin asked, "Why are you thanking me?" "I heard about the agreement between you and 3 generations." After a little silence, Kakashi said. I know it's unfair to you. I'm sorry. Hyojin smiled and said, if you're talking about the authority of the position, then you don't have to apologize. I'm not interested in those things, and I've also received money. Hearing Hyojin say this, Kakashi no longer mentioned the authority of the position and said with a serious face, Kuroto, you have to be prepared. After the election, we may face a rebellion. Hyojin glanced at Kakashi. At this time, he had some doubts that the village deliberately delayed the vote of confidence, probably to buy time for Kakashi to recover, in order to deal with the possible rebellion of the Uchiha clan. After thinking for a moment, Hyojin asked, has the date of the vote of confidence been set? Kakashi nodded and said, well, the whole village will be informed today. Tomorrow, the vote of confidence of the 5th Naruto will be officially held. So soon? Hyojin was a little surprised. He thought that the village would delay it for a while, but he did not expect that the vote of confidence would officially start tomorrow. It could be seen that the Uchiha clan must have put a lot of pressure on the village. Kakashi looked at Hyojin and said, Kuroto, by tomorrow, you will be Naruto. Naruto, although he did not care much about the position of Naruto, when he thought that he would officially become the 5th Naruto of my tomorrow, Hyojin suddenly fell into a trance. There's only one day left in September. Students who still have monthly votes in their hands, don't forget to vote. Also, it's a new week, and the list will be updated. It's no trouble at all. Thank you, everyone. Chapter 8:18. Soon, the news that the 5th Sama Naruto's election, which had been delayed for more than half a month, had spread throughout the village overnight. Early the next morning, the entire my village fell into a kind of fanatical excitement. In the crowing of the rooster and the dawn, people walked out of their houses in 2s and 3s. They shuttled through the streets and alleys of the village and gradually gathered into a stream of people. Amidst the laughter of children, the hawkers' cries, and the noisy discussion, people from all directions flocked to the Naruto building. Who do you think will become the 5th Sama between Uchiha and Hyuga? It should be the patriarch of Uchiha. Well, after all, he has the Manjikyu Sharingan. Yes, the Susa of the Uchiha family's Manjikyu Sharingan is really too strong. What a pity. The village canceled the last competition. Otherwise, we could have had a feast for our eyes. The focus of the villagers' discussion was naturally which of the 2 candidates of Naruto would win and become the Naruto of the village. For ordinary villagers who lacked inside information and didn't understand the decisions of the high-level officials, the patriarch of Uchiha, who had the Manjikyu Sharingan, obviously had a much higher chance of winning than Hyojin of the Hyuga family. Listening to the discussion of the villagers coming and going, Shinji Uchiha, who was in charge of maintaining street security, raised the corner of his mouth proudly. There was no doubt that the previous battle between Uchiha Fuyue and Kakashi had completely shown the power of Uchiha, which made many villagers who watched the battle realize the strength of Uchiha. In particular, Kakashi, who had opened the 8 inner gates, launched a ferocious and futile attack against Uchiha Fuyue's Susanoo, which made the villagers more aware of the invincibility of Uchiha's Susanoo. Uchiha glanced at the distant Naruto rock, glanced at the statues of the 1st, 2nd, 3 generations, and 4 generations one by one, and said, Humph, the position in Naruto is finally our Uchiha's turn. At this moment, a large group of ninjas in uniform walked towards them from the dark street. They had an imposing aura. The villagers along the road gave way when they saw them, and some villagers even consciously lowered their heads to show their respect. This large group of ninjas was none other than the famous Uchiha clan in the ninja world. The one in the lead was one of the candidates for the 5th Naruto's position, and also the current patriarch of the Uchiha clan, Uchiha Fuyue. He was dressed in splendid clothes, and with a dignified face, he led the Uchiha clan towards the Naruto building. Behind Uchiha Fuyue was his wife, Uchiha Makoto, and his 2 sons, Itachi Uchiha and Uchiha Sasuke. Following them were Uchiha Fuyue's wife, Uchiha Shinichi, and his 2 sons, Itachi Uchiha and Uchiha Sasuke. Behind them were the Jonin and Tokubetsu Jonin of the Uchiha clan. Looking at the mighty crowd of clansmen, Uchiha Shinji, who was on duty, hurriedly greeted them and bowed to the leading patriarch, Fuyue, and said, "I congratulate the patriarch in advance for winning the position of Naruto today." Fugaku, who had a dignified expression, responded indifferently. Feeling the majesty exuding from the patriarch, Uchiha Shinji became even more respectful and maintained his posture of bowing and retreated to the side. In the team, looking at the respect of the clansmen towards their father, as well as the respect of the villagers along the street towards Uchiha, Sasuke, who was following Itachi, had a taut face on the surface, but in his heart, he was overjoyed. Our Uchiha clan is really the strongest shinobi in the village. Sasuke was secretly proud of himself. At his young age, his understanding of the title Naruto is very superficial, but this does not prevent him from enjoying the envy, awe, and even fear of others. Not long after the Uchiha clan passed, a large group of ninjas in uniform arrived on the street. Looking at the oncoming ninjas with a pair of supercilious eyes, Uchiha Shinji spat lightly and said to himself, "Be proud of yourself. Today is the only day. After today, the Hyuga clan will have a good time in the future." Naturally, the oncoming group is the Hyuga clan, which is known as the Hyuga clan along with Uchiha clan, one of the two most powerful pupil technique clans in Mai. Walking at the front of the team is the Patriarch Hayashi and several elders of the Hyuga clan. Although they are reluctant to cheer for Hyugin's candidacy for the 5th generation Naruto, but after all, this is the moment that the Hyuga clan is closest to the position of Naruto since the establishment of Mai. So under the coercion of the Patriarch Hayashi, several elders of the Hyuga clan reluctantly came. And the eldest daughter of the Hyuga clan, Hinata, held the hand of her sister Hana and followed behind several elders of the Hyuga clan. Behind them are the Jonin and Special Jonin of the Hyuga clan, and in the front of the team of the Hyuga clan is Richa, who was released half a month ago, and Ningtse, who is following Richa with an excited face. As the 3 generations and Hyugen negotiated the conditions, Richa, who has been detained, was released. After all, Hyugen is about to succeed the 5th generation Naruto. If the village continues to detain Richa, then the face of the new Naruto clan won't look good. Strange. Glancing at the people of the Hyuga clan one by one, Shinji Uchiha was surprised to find that Hyugen, the candidate of Naruto clan, is not in the team of the Hyuga clan. In Hyugen's home, Yu, who was tidying up Hyugen's hair, muttered in a low voice, "Kuroto-kun, don't we really need to arrive in advance? Today is the day of the vote of confidence. It will be better to go earlier." The agreement between Hyugen and the 3 generations is only known to the advisory elder group, as well as Kakashi, Asuma, and a few others. As the disciple of Tsunade, Yu was kept in the dark. Hyugen smiled and said, "Don't panic, the protagonist always has to be the finale." Yu looked at the handsome Hyugen in the mirror and asked in a daze, "Kuroto-kun, will I really become Naruto clan? Will my head be carved on the Naruto rock like Hashirama, Nidaime, 3 generations and 4 generations?" Although it has been more than half a month since Hyugen participated in the election of the 5th Naruto clan, Yu is still not used to the increasingly enthusiastic attitude of the people of the Hyuga clan toward her, as well as the politeness and respect of her colleagues in the Mai Hospital. In the face of all this, her heart has always been haunted by a sense of unreality. From time to time, she will be dazed, unable to tell whether she is in a dream or reality. "Maybe," Hyugen replied casually. Yu suddenly bowed her head and laughed foolishly. Hyugen asked curiously, "What are you thinking about? Why are you laughing so happily?" Yu said happily, "This time, I will pay for the best craftsman in the Land of Fire to build the Naruto rock statue for me." Hyugen nodded gently and then added, "Remember to ask for the invoice." The second update, the last 20 hours of September, students who still have monthly votes, don't forget to vote. On Monday, the list will be updated, and I would like to ask for recommendation votes, and thank the students who tipped yesterday. Thank you, everyone. Chapter 819. Bang Bang. In the midst of the two fireworks salutes, the crowded square in front of the Naruto building suddenly boiled up. All kinds of voices gathered together and turned into a huge sound wave. It reverberated in the sky above the square like a thunderclap in the clear sky. On the roof of the Naruto building, Jiraiya looked at the noisy square in front of him and sighed. It's really similar to that day. The day mentioned by Jiraiya is naturally the day when the four generations Naruto Minato and one of the Sannin, Orochimaru, launched a vote of confidence for the position of Naruto. At that time, Minato and Orochimaru were both heroes who won the war for the village. Whether it is strength or popularity, the two are very close and can be regarded as evenly matched opponents. And because the village had just ended the cruel Third Shinobi World War and walked out of the haze of war, the villagers put all their enthusiasm into the election of Naruto, making the election on that day as lively as today. Tsunade, who was next to Jiraiya, focused all her attention on Uchiha Fuyue, who was also on the roof of the Naruto building. She looked at Uchiha Fuyue's confident expression and couldn't help but frown slightly. She is not worried about the result of today's vote of confidence. What she's really worried about is that Uchiha Fuyue is so determined to win, and once the result is out, the other party may not be able to accept it and do something irrational. After all, as a member of the Senju clan, Tsunade knows better than anyone that the Uchiha clan is a very emotional clan. Once they lose control of their emotions, they can do anything. Then, Tsunade's eyes move to the two kaleidoscopes of the Uchiha family, standing behind Uchiha Fuyue, Jishuei, and Uchiha Shinichi. The thought that if the Uchiha clan rebelled, the village will directly face 3 pairs of Manjikyu Sharingan. Tsunade felt a headache. Why hasn't Kuroto arrived yet? Suddenly, the voice of the 3 generations Naruto asked the Umbu. An Umbu half-knelt on the ground and reported to the 3 generations. We have sent someone to urge Kuroto. Kuroto-sama said that he will arrive soon. He must be on his way. The 3 generations nodded gloomily and immediately glanced at Uchiha Fuyue not far away. Although they have considered the worst-case scenario and made various contingency plans, the 3 generations still felt a little uneasy. The situation of the Uchiha clan possessing 3 pairs of Manjikyu Sharingan at the same time is unprecedented since the establishment of Mai. Even the Hashirama has not encountered such a tricky situation. Even if the 4 generations were still alive, it would be difficult to suppress the ambitions of the Uchiha clan today. Not to mention that the strength of the Naruto clan is not as good as it used to be, and the best descendant Kakashi was defeated by Uchiha Fuyue in the arena. Therefore, with the announcement of the 5th Naruto clan today, what kind of future will Mai usher in? Even the doctor of ninjutsu 3 generations can't predict. Seemingly aware of the gaze of the 3 generations, Uchiha Fuyue said in a deep voice, "Let's begin." The Jonin in charge of the Naruto election ceremony smiled and said, "Hyojin, Sama is on the way. Please wait for a moment." Uchiha Fuyue snorted in displeasure. He hasn't arrived yet. Is he thinking of withdrawing from the election? You must be joking. The Jonin smiled awkwardly. At this moment, there was a sudden commotion in the crowd of people in the square, and the villagers spontaneously retreated to the sides, making a passage several meters wide in the crowded square. The people on the top of the Hokage building immediately noticed this movement in the square, and they all looked over. Kuroto and Yui walked leisurely towards the Hokage building with a leisurely and contented look on his face as the crowd parted on the side of the square. His expression was calm, as if he was taking a stroll in spring. However, Kuroto's face was red, and under the attention of the crowd, she lowered her head and followed behind Hyojin with small steps. Her hands were swaying a little messily, showing her nervousness at the moment. Finally here, almost at the same time, the people of the Naruto clan and the Hyuga clan all breathed a sigh of relief. Hyojin came at the right time, letting them worry for nothing. Uchiha Fuyue stared at Hyojin with a gloomy expression. After Hyojin led Kuroto to the roof of the Naruto building, the 3 generations saluted the daimyo of the Land of Fire on the viewing platform next to the Naruto building, and then loudly announced to the villagers in the square, "I declare that the vote of confidence for the 5th generation Naruto officially begins now." With the announcement of the 3 generations, a huge ballot box was moved to the main entrance of the Naruto building by several umbu. This ballot box is half the height of a person and is engraved with all kinds of sealing techniques. Even the Hyuga clan who have the Byakugan can't see through the wall of the ballot box and see the situation inside clearly. With the appearance of the ballot box, the Jonin who had already lined up in a long line began to vote in an orderly manner. According to the tradition of the Mai clan, all active or retired Jonin, as well as special Jonin, are eligible to participate in this vote of confidence. But even so, the number of Jonin is actually not that large. In the case of extreme mobilization, the Mai clan can mobilize about 13,000 to 15,000 Mai ninjas. This is the reason why in the 4th Shinobi War, the 5 great shinobi villages and the samurai of the Land of Iron were able to gather a huge force of more than 80,000 troops in a short period of time. And the Jonin is the backbone of the more than 10,000 Mai ninjas. They belong to the commander rank, and the proportion of them in the total Mai ninjas is very low. In the war, under normal circumstances, a Jonin can command at least 3 to 5 4-person squads. That is to say, a Jonin can command at least more than a dozen ordinary Chunin and Genin. In some extreme cases, a Jonin can even command a dozen or 24-person squads, hundreds of Chunin and Genin. Like the Battle of the Kamubi Bridge that Kakashi participated in, the situation where there are 2 Jonin in a 4-person squad is extremely rare and cannot be regarded as the norm. In the original space and time, in the 4-member team of Konoha's 12 Roaches, each team has a strong mentor. In fact, it is also a special case because not all students can be assigned to a Jonin-level mentor. Most of the student team's mentors are actually just Chunin level. Therefore, although Mai can mobilize more than 10,000 ninjas to the limit, the number of Jonin and special Jonin who are commanders is actually only a few hundred, including some retired Jonin. So the ratio of Jonin to all the ninjas fluctuates between 150 to 100. The first update is here, asking for recommendation votes, monthly votes. Chapter 820. It is your support, your love, that has allowed this Tenseigan to gain new glory. During the National Day holiday in October, I wish everyone a good time. I will also write at home, as usual, and keep updating every day, adding some insignificant joy to everyone's holiday life. After all, I am just a small-time writer, and I have to work all year round. Oh, intersection_intersection. Oh, the monthly ticket double event will continue until the end of the National Day holiday, so I implore everyone to vote for me. In addition, this chapter seems to be closed, and it will not be displayed after it is published. It seems that it will only be displayed after the holiday, which is a bit troublesome. Finally, I wish everyone a happy holiday. Begging for monthly tickets, begging for subscriptions, begging for pity. The world of Naruto in the eyes of Tenseigan wishes everyone a happy National Day. Currently typing, please wait a moment. After the content is updated, please refresh the page to get the latest update. Chapter 821. It is precisely because the number of Jonin is so small that both sides of the election will focus on the major shinobi clans. Because the major shinobi clans with a long history are the hotbeds to train Jonin in batches. Compared with the Jonin from the shinobi clans, the Jonin from the civilian background are not only rare, but they also often have some relatively obvious shortcomings or flaws. This is because they do not have the support of their clan, although they have good talent, but because of the lack of systematic ninja education, leading to their lack of tactics, and means are not comprehensive enough. And this is the main reason why the civilian Jonin, or all civilian ninjas, in the war and the mission, the casualty rate is far higher than that of the shinobi clans. And the ninjas from the shinobi clans, because they have a variety of ninjutsu and secret techniques developed by their ancestors from generation to generation. They have mature tactics that have been tested on the battlefield by their ancestors, and they also have the experience and lessons learned by their ancestors in exchange for the blood of their ancestors. So the ninjas from the shinobi clans not only have comprehensive strength, but also a variety of tactics, and even their vision and knowledge are far superior to that of the civilian ninjas. In this way, the survival rate is naturally higher than that of the civilian ninjas. Therefore, in the vote of confidence in the number of votes, any small clan can easily pull out a bunch of jonin. This is because of the survival rate. There are a large number of jonin who retired due to disability or retired due to old age. Although these jonin no longer have the combat power corresponding to a jonin, it does not affect their identity as a jonin to participate in the vote of confidence, and the vote they cast is no different from the vote cast by a middle-aged jonin. Soon, there was a lot of noise in the square. The noise was caused by a large group of jonin from the Uchiha clan walking towards the ballot box located at the main entrance of the Naruto building. Oh my god, does the Uchiha clan have so many jonin? So many Uchiha, are they all jonin? Could it be a mistake? Are you stupid? Sandame-sama is watching from above, and there are Umbu checking the ballot boxes. How could the Uchiha clan play such a dirty trick? The villagers in the square immediately began to discuss. In the past, it has always been said that the Uchiha clan is the most powerful clan in Konoha, but as to how strong it is, the ordinary villagers lack an intuitive understanding of it. Now, seeing the jonin of the Uchiha clan gather together and rush to the ballot box, the villagers realize that the Uchiha clan is indeed worthy of being the most powerful clan in Konoha. On the roof of a tall building next to the square, Sasuke pointed at the Uchiha jonin who were coming forward to vote and said to Naruto, Ningxi, and the others, "Do you see that? Those are our Uchiha's jonin." Naruto sighed. "Sasuke, your family has so many people." Ningxi frowned slightly. The number of Uchiha's jonin gathered really exceeded his expectations. Unlike the Hyuga clan, the Uchiha clan doesn't have many clansmen who can open their Sharingan, but because of the screening of Sharingan, almost all of the Uchiha jonin who can open their Sharingan are elites. As long as they grow up normally and awaken their Sharingan to the level of Samagatama, then their strength will naturally reach the level of jonin. Therefore, after the weakening of Senju, the Uchiha clan's jonin, whether it is quantity or quality, has always been the leader of the Mai clan. And this is also the reason why they dare to propose a rebellion. If not for this, the Uchiha clan wouldn't be muttering about rebellion all day long. In fact, the current number of jonin in the Uchiha clan is the result of 3 generations of secret restrictions. Many of the Uchiha who participated in the voting have already reached the strength of a normal jonin, but for various reasons, the village has kept them at the special jonin first order, and some of the Uchiha who have reached the strength of a Tokubetsu jonin are firmly bound to the Chunin first order. Hinata on the side saw this and pulled Ningxi's sleeves worriedly. Ningxi stretched his brows and smiled at Hinata. "Don't worry, Sensei will not lose." Sasuke heard this and pouted at Ningxi. "Humph, stubborn." Ningxi, look carefully. Today, the one to win the position of Naruto and become the 5th Naruto will be my father. On the roof of the Naruto building, looking at the groups of Uchiha clan members voting below, Uchiha Fuwa raised the corner of his mouth and glanced at Hyojin and the 3 generations and the elders present with aggressive eyes, and then said to Jishuei and Shinichi next to him, "You guys go down and vote too." "Okay." After responding, Jishuei and Shinichi left the roof of the Naruto building. At this time, Tsunade glanced at the 3 generations and seemed to be complaining about why the 3 generations approved so many jonin for the Uchiha clan. 3 generations bitterly took a puff of the pipe. He is also suffering. The Uchiha clan has so many jonin that meet the standard of jonin. What can he do? Especially after Homusubi and Shinichi awakened their Manjikyu Sharingan, as well as the emergence of several Uchiha shinobi from Amatsukami and Akatsuki. The Uchiha clansmen became even more motivated and worked hard to practice Manjikyu Sharingan. Over the years, the average strength of the Uchiha clan has improved far more than that of the other clans in the village. If it weren't for the fact that Kuroto had already dealt with Uchiha Ryota and Uchiha Hideki, who were the most radical and most likely to awaken the Manjikyu Sharingan. Under the stimulation of this trend, the two brothers who have already reached the level of elite Jonin might have awakened the Manjikyu Sharingan naturally. It seems that in order to regain the momentum, after the Jonin of the Uchiha clan finished voting, a large group of people of the Hyuga clan also rushed to the ballot box. Compared to the Uchiha clan, there are actually a lot of Jonin in the Hyuga clan. It's just that most of the Jonin are special Jonin, and there are many white-haired Jonin in the crowd. Some even need to be supported by attendants to walk. One of them was an old man who looked much older than Sandame. He was trembling when he walked and needed the support of two Hyuga clansmen to help him walk. Looking at this scene, Fuyue casually glanced at Hyojin with a face full of ridicule. Hyojin, on the other hand, didn't feel embarrassed and remained calm. There is no doubt that in order for the Hyuga clan to have a Naruto, Hayashi even invited the old man who had retired long ago and was unable to walk. Obviously, he didn't care about his face and went all out. After the Uchiha clan and the Hyuga clan voted one after another, the other Jonin returned to order and came forward to vote one by one. And looking at the voting process below, the smile on Fuyue's face became wider and wider, because many of the ninjas who voted below had hinted to him in the past half a month that they would vote for him in the voting session. The second update, during the 11th holiday, there will also be double monthly votes, so I beg everyone to support me. In addition, I would like to thank the students who gave me gifts yesterday. Thank you, everyone. Chapter 822. The vote of confidence is still in progress. Except for the initial Uchiha clan and the Hyuga clan, the other Jonin did not rush to the ballot box, but consciously lined up in a long line and went forward to vote one by one. Although the whole voting scene was tense and exciting, it was stable and orderly. The Jonin on duty or the Jonin who went out on a mission also entrusted their relatives and friends to vote on their behalf. So almost all the Jonin in the village participated in this vote of confidence. On the roof of the Naruto building, as the voting came to an end, Fugaka looked at the ballot box calmly. A gleam of light flashed in his eyes, and a long-cherished smile gradually appeared on his face. Throughout the voting process, he seemed to have a card up his sleeve, but in fact, he has been paying close attention to the voting process. I won. When the last Jonin at the end of the voting line completed his vote, Fuyue shouted excitedly in his heart. At this moment, he, who was used to suppressing himself, was extremely excited. The Sharingan in his eyes inadvertently opened, his body trembled slightly because of excitement, and even his breathing became a lot heavier. He paid attention to the whole voting process and silently counted his votes in his heart. And adding up the votes of the Uchiha clan and the votes of those clans who have expressed their support to him, he has exceeded Hyojin by at least 10 votes. In other words, even if there's a little oversight in the voting process, he still has a margin of 10 votes. So he firmly believes that he won this time. With the end of the voting, the noisy square suddenly quieted down. Whether it is the villagers watching the fun, or the my ninjas maintaining the order, or the umbu hidden in the dark, at this moment, all of them looked at the ballot box, holding their breath and waiting for the results of the voting. At this time, 3 generations said to Hyojin and Fuyue, "The voting is over. Now start to check the votes." Hyojin said, "Okay." Fuyue did not answer, just nodded proudly, and began to put on the style of Naruto. With the approval of the 2 Naruto candidates, several staff came to the ballot box and began to check the votes. On the other side of the platform, 4 generations of Kazekage asked the other Kage around him, "Who do you think will win between Uchiha and Hyuga?" 3 generations of Tsuchikage smiled. Hee, isn't it obvious? After staying in Konoha village for several months, Tsuchikage-sama has long been clear about the situation in Konoha, so when Konoha announced the cancellation of the 3rd round of the competition and directly entered the vote of confidence, he already knew who the 5th Hokage would belong to. 4 generations of Kazekage laying said, "Tsuchikage-sama, do you think Uchiha will lose?" 3 generations of Tsuchikage slyly said, "I didn't say anything." 4 generations of Kazekage, Lei Ying said in a muffled voice. I hope Uchiha will win. Lei Ying's idea is very simple. The 5 Kages are the last dignity of the 5 great shinobi villages, and also the last trump card of the 5 great shinobi villages to resist the Akatsuki organization, so the 5 Kages can't be held by the weak. Although Hyojin is also very good, in his opinion, compared with Uchiha Fuyue, who has the Manjiki Sharingan, he is still weak. Therefore, the 5th Naruto should be held by Uchiha Fuyue, the patriarch of Uchiha. After listening to the words of 3 generations of Kazekage, the 4 generations of Kazekage showed a thoughtful look on his face, and after a while he whispered, If Uchiha loses, I am afraid that the situation of Mai will become unstable. 3 generations Naruto is so experienced and astute, he should not take such a risk, right? Just now, the number of Uchiha Jonin in the vote has already shown the strength of the Uchiha clan, coupled with the fact that Uchiha clan now has 3 pairs of Manjiki Sharingan. The strength of the clan is even stronger than some small shinobi villages, so once Uchiha loses, a turmoil is imminent. Therefore, 4 generations of Kazekage felt that in the face of this situation, 3 generations Naruto should compromise with the Uchiha clan and wisely give the position of Naruto to the Uchiha clan. The 3 generations of Kazekage shook his head and sneered. On the roof of the building next to the square, Naruto pointed in the direction of the Naruto building and shouted, Look, they're going to open the ballot box. There is no need for Naruto to shout. At this moment, whether it's Sasuke, Ningxi, or even Hinata and Sparks, they each opened their Sharingan, Byakugan, and looked at the ticket counter in front of the Naruto building. Father is going to become Naruto soon. Sasuke's nervous face was full of expectation and longing. The one who will become the 5th generation must be Sensei. Ningxi looked at the ticket counter intently, and his heart was very sure. Under the attention of everyone, the ticket counter was quickly completed, and the staff quickly came to the roof of the Naruto building and handed the results of the vote to the 3 generations. Just glancing at it slightly, the 3 generations smiled and announced, The results of the vote of confidence have been calculated. After listening to the words of the 3 generations, Fuyue straightened his chest and in his mind began to prepare the declaration after the succession of Naruto. Yuri, who was next to Hyojin, tightly grabbed Hyojin's sleeves, and even a layer of sweat appeared on her forehead due to nervousness. Zhuan Xiaochun, Jiraiya, Tsunade, and other senior members of the Mai clan also looked at the 3 generations, waiting for the 3 generations to announce the results of the vote of confidence. Seeing that everyone's eyes were focused on him, the 3 generations did not hesitate and immediately announced, The winner of this vote of confidence is Hyojin. In an instant, the ninjas of the Naruto clan and the Hyuga clan cheered and applauded. But amidst the cheers around, Uchiha and Fuyue seemed to have tinnitus in their ears. They were stunned, and the joy and pride on their faces froze in an instant. Then Uchiha and Fuyue roared, I demand a new ticket check. This furious roar drowned out everyone's cheers, causing everyone to look over at the same time. The faces of the 3 generations darkened. Fuyue, are you questioning the fairness of the village? Fuyue said word by word. I want to check the tickets myself. Looking at the pair of scarlet Sharingan shining with a strange light in Fuyue's eyes, the 3 generations pondered for a moment, and then immediately said, Well, since you have doubts, go and check the tickets yourself. Under this change, the square, which had just become restless because of the announcement of the results by the 3 generations, suddenly quieted down again. Everyone looked at Uchiha and Fuyue, who had come to the ballot box. And Uchiha and Fuyue, who were walking to the ballot box, shouted wildly in his heart, Damn it, I obviously have more votes. They must have done something during the ticket check. It must be, First, please recommend votes, monthly votes. Chapter 823. The bright smile on Ling's face once again turned into nervousness because of Fuyue's doubts about the ticket inspection. Hyojin becoming the 5th Naruto was indeed like a dream to her, a dream that was too sweet and too fantastic. But even so, she still wanted to finish this beautiful dream. Therefore, looking at Fuyue, who was walking to the ticket inspection, her heart was in her throat. Feeling that his cuff was tightly grasped by Ling, Hyojin gently patted Ling's hand and chuckled, "Don't worry." Ling nodded, but she still couldn't help but look at the ticket inspection with a very nervous expression. Fuyue, who was walking to the ticket inspection, also calmed down a little. At this moment, he has realized that it was impossible for the village to tamper with the ticket inspection because it would be too easy to be exposed, and among the staff responsible for the ticket inspection, there were also several Uchiha clansmen that he specially arranged. Could it be that one of the clans that promised to support me betrayed me? A doubt came to his mind. Soon, Fuyue came to the ticket inspection. The Uchiha clansmen that he arranged to participate in the ticket inspection quickly shook their heads at him. Their faces were very gloomy. Fuyue ignored the clansmen, but went forward to check the votes of the Jonins one by one, and the more he checked, the more embarrassed his face became. In the end, his whole face turned red, and the 3 Tomo Sharingan in his eyes unconsciously turned into the shape of a kaleidoscope. This group of damned, shameless people. Fuyue roared in his heart, and his killing intent spread out like a real substance. Not to mention the Umbu on the side. Even the Uchiha clansmen who participated in the ticket inspection subconsciously took 2 steps back at this moment, looking at Fuyue with a horrified face. In his chakra perception, at this moment, Fuyue's chakra was as cold and gloomy as a demon. Crash flipping over the long table in front of the ticket counter, Fuyue breathed heavily. His eyes were filled with killing intent as he looked at those clan leaders in the distance, who had hinted to him that they would vote for him. The patriarchs of the various clans in the distance looked away and turned their heads to the side. Fuyue gritted his teeth and said, "You damned bastards, I will make you understand the price of making fun of our noble Uchiha clan." The reason why Fuyue lost control of his emotions was because after he personally checked the votes, he was surprised to find that the voting results were very different from what he had expected. He didn't lose to Hyojin because of the difference of 1 or 2 votes, but by losing to Hyojin by hundreds of votes, which means that in addition to Uchiha's own votes, all the other shinobi clans who had hinted that they would support him have betrayed him without exception. As a result, a huge wave of humiliation enveloped him, causing him, who had always restrained his emotions, to be extremely furious and unable to control himself. On the roof of the Naruto building, looking at the murderous Uchiha Fuyue below, Hyojin also realized something and glanced at the 3 generations around him. There is no doubt that in order to stabilize the Uchiha clan and buy more time to deal with the possible rebellion, the village used some small tricks to deceive the judgment of the Uchiha clan, making Fuyue think that the vote of confidence was a sure win. Only in this way can it explain why Fuyue changed from a confident look to a hysterical look now. As for the means used by the village, it is nothing more than letting some of the shinobi clans say some ambiguous words to Fuyue, making Fuyue mistakenly think that he has received support, and then put more energy into canvassing votes. Hey, what a stupid thing to do. After vaguely guessing the cause and effect, Hyojin secretly cursed. With the pride of the Uchiha clan being played like a monkey by the village, even with the indecisiveness of Fuyue, I am afraid that he will have no choice but to rebel. In other words, by doing this, the village has taken the initiative to give up the negotiation, directly acquiescing that Uchiha clan will inevitably rebel, and began to deploy in advance, regarding Uchiha clan as the target of attack. In Hyojin's view, is not that the village does not have a better way. When Uchiha Fuyue proposed to restart the election of the 5th Naruto, the village should have put aside their prejudices, decisively made a judgment, and then fully supported Jishuei, who is inclined to Naruto's faction. After all, the key to the village's fear of Jishuei is Jishuei's Manjikyu, Sharingan technique, Kotoeme Tsukumi, that can permanently change the will of others, and if Jishuei himself becomes Naruto, this fear will no longer exist. But the prejudice accumulated for decades and the misunderstanding on the night of the Nine-Tails Rebellion are not so easy to eliminate. This also led to the Naruto faction missing the only candidate that could be accepted by both sides as Naruto. In addition, Kakashi lost the key battle that must not be lost, which forced the Naruto faction step by step to the corner, and had to do something that in the eyes of an outsider like Hyojin is extremely stupid. At this time, the Uchiha clan at the ticket counter came to the side of Uchiha Fuyue and asked, "Patriarch, what should we do now?" Fuyue, who knows that he has been trapped in a conspiracy from beginning to end, just turned his head and glanced coldly at the people on the Naruto building, and immediately said in an extremely cold tone, "Let's go." After saying that, Uchiha Fuyue didn't even say goodbye and led the Uchiha clan to leave. Looking at Fuyue leaving, Hyojin was also a little speechless. He sneered. He fell for such an obvious trap. If not you, who else would he have tricked? Hyojin really couldn't understand why Fuyue felt so good about himself that he thought that all the clans in the village would support him. Such a misjudgment was simply fatal for a decision-maker. From this point of view, it was not entirely wrong for Naruto's faction not to make concessions and let him be the fifth generation. In the original time and space, when his son slaughtered the whole clan and raised his sword at him, he found out that his son was a spy of the village. This kind of belated realization was really rare. Just as Hyojin was feeling a little emotional, Ling, who was beside him, cried tears of joy and said excitedly, "Jin, you've become Naruto. You've really become Naruto." At this time, 3 generations walked in front of Hyojin, took off the bamboo hat of Naruto on their heads, and handed it to Hyojin. "Hyojin, from this moment on, you're the 5th generation Naruto of my village." In an instant, applause and cheers rang out. After taking the bamboo hat of Naruto and listening to the applause and cheers, Hyojin was a little stunned. He didn't intend to become a Hokage at all, but he didn't expect that he would become the Hokage in the most orthodox and impeccable way. Amidst the cheers of the entire village, he personally received the Hokage hat from Sandaime-sama and succeeded to the position of the Hokage. "Sai, I'm a spy that Orochimaru left in the village. How did I become Naruto?" At this time, a thought suddenly came into Hyojin's mind. If Orochimaru, who had been defeated in the vote of confidence, knew that his disciple had passed the vote of confidence and become the 5th generation Naruto, what would his expression be? The second update is here. Yesterday, I ate something bad and had diarrhea for a whole day, so I was dizzy. Originally, I was going to ask for more votes, but I had no choice but to give up. However, the monthly votes would be doubled during the National Day, so I could only ask for votes shamelessly. Please support me. Thanks. Chapter 824. Rumble. Rumble, standing on a high cliff outside Konoha village, wearing a vortex mask, Obito understood that the 5th Hokage of Konoha has been born. Listening to the faint sound of the salute coming from the distant Konoha village and the cheers of the crowd lingering over the village, Obito understood that the 5th Hokage of Konoha has been born. Beside Obsidian, there was another person standing quietly at the moment. This person is Hyuga Aoki, who fled from Konoha in a hurry not long ago. But judging from his posture of being able to stand calmly without the help of any external objects, it may not be his original body that has been disabled for a long time, but a puppet that is almost exactly the same as his original body, like a living person. Obviously, after cooperating with the Akatsuki organization, Hyuga Aoki has received technical support from the Akatsuki organization and obtained a puppet that is far more powerful than before. Opening the Byakugan in the eye sockets, Hyuga Aoki observed for a while and immediately smiled. It seems that the candidate of the 5th generation has been revealed. The Byakugan in the eye sockets of this puppet is undoubtedly the high-purity Byakugan that Hyuga Aoki obtained when he attacked the elder of the clan who was guarding the secret warehouse. However, because the distance is too far, even if the purity of the Byakugan is very high, it is impossible to see who won and became the 5th generation Naruto. It can only be judged from a movement in the village that the candidate of the 5th generation Naruto has been revealed. Obsidian glanced at Hyuga Aoki next to him. Who do you think it will be? It should be your Uchiha. After a pause, Hyuga Aoki said with a playful expression. Anyway, the position of Naruto, the village will never let a dog whose life is in the hands of others sit on it. There is no doubt about that. Although his tone was joking, Kuroto Aoki's expression was extremely firm. As a member of the Hyuga branch family, Hyuga Aoki is very clear about the political status of the Hyuga branch family in the village. To put it bluntly, the Hyuga branch family is inferior, in some cases even inferior to civilian ninjas, so he is very sure that it is impossible for Hyojin to defeat Uchiha Fuyue and become the supreme leader of the village. That makes sense. Thinking of the past in the ninja school, Obsidian also feels that Hyojin's chances of winning are not big, or he is unwilling to accept the fact that Hyojin can become Naruto. Because to him, this was simply too absurd. A moment later, Zetsu poked half of his body out of the ground and said, Mai's 5th generation Naruto has been chosen. Seeing that Obsidian and Hyuga Aoki didn't seem to be curious at all, Zetsu was startled and asked, Why? Do you already know who 5th generation Naruto is? The Uchiha clan planted Shinichi in our organization and successfully took back Shinichi and obtained a lot of information from our organization, forcing us to change our base again, coupled with Uchiha Fuyue's Manjikyu Sharingan. There are 3 pairs of Manjikyu Sharingan in the Uchiha clan at the same time. Such a credit, such power. Even the 3 generations have to compromise. Obsidian said slowly. He feels that Hyojin can't be Naruto. In addition to the mutual disdain of being the last in the Shinobi clan, it is also his judgment of the current power of the Uchiha clan. Zetsu shrugged and teased. Uchiha clan seems to think the same as you, but it is a pity that the winner this time is Hyojin. He is the 5th generation Naruto of Mai. Under the vortex mask, Obsidian was stunned. Without waiting for Obsidian to question, Hyuga Aoki on the side shouted with a ferocious expression, No, this is impossible. This is impossible. How can Hyojin be Naruto? For a long time, Hyuga Aoki has believed that his tragic life is caused by the caged bird on his forehead, caused by the main family that is above the branch family. It is the caged bird and the main family that cover the branch family with a ceiling that can't be seen but can be touched. No matter how excellent the members of the branch family are, how hard they work, they can't break free from this ceiling called fate. But Kuroto, who is also a member of the branch family, became the 5th Hokage of the village through the vote of all the Jonin in the most impeccable way. This fact undoubtedly subverts his inherent concept of the village. It seems to tell him that as long as he is good enough, the so-called fate ceiling can also be broken, and Hyojin, who became the 5th generation Naruto, is the example in front of him. No, he's just a guard dog who is willing to obey the orders of the main family. How can he be better than me? Better than Aoki? No, I will never admit it. I am the one who broke the fate. Hyuga Aoki roared hysterically. The feeling of being easily denied by others made him extremely painful. Kuroto defeated Jishue, defeated Kakashi, defeated Fuyue, and became Naruto. How is this possible? There must be something wrong, even if it's Kakashi. Although Obsidian only thought in his heart and did not shout, but from his clenched fists, it can be seen that his heart was not calm. Looking at the 2 people who were a little out of control, Zetsu said speechlessly, I think you should accept this fact as soon as possible. The 5th generation Naruto of my village is Hyojin. After a long time, Obsidian and Hyuga Aoki calmed down. Obsidian suddenly said, Hyojin becoming Naruto is not entirely a bad thing for us. Hyuga Aoki grinned and echoed, Yes, the village did a stupid thing. He will never admit that the tragic fate of himself and his brother Hyuga Aoki is just because they are not good enough. So he vented his anger on Hyojin, who successfully broke through the ceiling of fate, subverted his concept, and everyone who contributed to Hyojin's rise to the top. He feels that they are wrong. Obviously, After accepting the fact that Hyojin has become 5th-generation Naruto, Obsidian and Hyuga Aoki, who are twisted in their hearts, quickly realize that this is a great opportunity to disturb Mai. Because Fuyue's failure means that Mai's Naruto clan has broken up with the Uchiha clan, who has 3 pairs of Manjikyu Sharingan. As long as they provoke a little, no, they don't even need to provoke. As long as they wait and see, it is likely that they will see a big drama of Uchiha clan rebelling in the near future. And once Uchiha, who has 3 pairs of Manjikyu Sharingan, rebelled, it will inevitably be an earth-shattering war, a war that will affect the entire Mai village. At that time, whether the Uchiha clan wins or the village wins, it will be an extremely heavy blow to Mai village. Perhaps the 5th-generation Naruto, elected today, will become the last Naruto of Mai village. First, I beg for recommendation votes, monthly votes. Chapter 825. In the Uchiha clan patriarch's mansion, Itachi stood quietly in the yard, sighing silently. After his father Fuyue failed in the election for the 5th-generation Naruto, the Uchiha clan fell into an inexplicable mania, and the whole clan land seemed to have become a powder keg that could ignite at any time. Even if he didn't pay special attention, Itachi could hear the faint curses coming from the street in his mansion. It was the voice of the clansmen cursing the village. Those curses, full of anger and disgust, sounded so harsh, so heart-wrenching, and it was hard to get over it. It still came to this point. The expression on Itachi's face became more and more gloomy. Tap, tap, tap. At this time, there was a rush of footsteps coming from the corridor of the courtyard, and without looking back, Itachi could hear from the light footsteps that it was his beloved brother Sasuke who was running in a hurry. Sure enough, Sasuke, with tears on his face, rushed to Itachi and asked in confusion, "Brother, brother, why did father lose the election?" Itachi squatted in front of Sasuke, gently wiped the tears from the corner of Sasuke's eyes, and said, "Sasuke, you are already a ninja. Don't cry easily in the future." Sasuke didn't care about the tears and asked persistently, "Father has clearly awakened the most powerful Manjikyu Sharingan. Why didn't everyone let father be Naruto?" Although he was young, the abuse of the clansmen in the clan land still made Sasuke understand the ins and outs of the vote of confidence, and understood the fact that the Uchiha clan was played by the village. Itachi whispered softly, "This is a very complicated problem. When you grow up, you will slowly understand." Sasuke pursed his lips. "This is not complicated at all. Shouldn't the most powerful ninja in the village be Naruto?" Itachi was stunned for a moment. Then he smiled, moved his eyes to the distance, and said to himself, "Yes, Naruto should be played by the most powerful ninja in the village. This is not complicated at all." In the tavern of the Uchiha clan, because of Hyojin's ban on using the Sharingan for 3 days, Uchiha and Shinichi did not go to the training ground as usual, but went to the izakaya to kill time. "I want to kill all those bastards who betrayed our Uchiha. Those are just the lackeys of the village. The one who really plotted against our Uchiha is the village. It's that old guy from 3 generations. That's right. With the incompetent 3 generations around, it's impossible for our Uchiha to become Naruto. Perhaps it was because of the alcohol, but the insults from the Uchiha people in the tavern were more straightforward and sharp than those on the street. Because it was an izakaya opened by the Uchiha people, the customers were all Uchiha people, so no one had the intention to stop. The insults were getting louder and louder, and there was no bottom line. In the corner, Shinichi was leisurely drinking wine, completely ignoring the insults that filled his ears. Suddenly, the drunk Uchiha Shinji came to Shinichi with a glass of wine in his hand, and said, "Shinichi, you are also drinking here to drown your sorrows." Shinichi glanced at the drunk Shinji, frowned, and said, "Aren't you supposed to be on duty today? Why are you drunk like this?" "Screw the duty." After cursing, Shinji burped, The village played us Uchiha like monkeys, and they want us to work for them? Not a chance." Shinichi shook his head and continued to drink. Shinji continued, "I know you are also unhappy. Don't worry. The Patriarch will not let those bastards have an easy time. Shinichi said casually. What else can the Patriarch do after losing the election? Patriarch, you, and Jishuei, our Uchiha has a total of 3 pairs of Manjikyu Sharingan. Are we afraid of the village? At worst, we will rebel. Shinji shouted as he hiccuped. Shinichi turned his head to look at the drunk Shinji and asked, Isn't it good to be alive? Shinji, who didn't hear clearly, shook his body. Hey, what did you just say? Nothing. Shinichi regained his leisurely expression and ignored the drunk Shinji. Rebel? Now Naruto was Hyojin, the strongest ninja in the world in Shinichi's eyes. He was the leader of Amatsukami, who had the Rinnegan. So in Shinichi's eyes, rebellion was no different from suicide. No, compared with rebellion, suicide was obviously easier. Not to mention the boss himself, the young god alone is enough to make our Uchiha suffer. If you idiots are in a hurry to die, don't drag me down with you. The Hyuga clan. Unlike the Uchiha clan, which is full of anger and irritation, the Hyuga clan is full of joy. Listening to the laughter of the people outside the house, Ningxi was also happy. Or, to be more precise, from a moment the 3 generations officially announced that Hyojin was the 5th Naruto of Mai, his face had been full of pride and joy. Ningxi, looking at his son in front of him who was distracted again, Richa shouted sternly. Father! Ningxi, who came back to his senses, quickly straightened his back and sat upright on his knees. Seeing that Ningxi had returned to his meticulous sitting posture, Richa nodded with satisfaction, and then said with a serious face, From today on, you are no longer just a member of the Hyuga clan, but a disciple of Naruto. Your every word and action represents Naruto-sama, so you have to restrain yourself more strictly. You must not fall into the hands of others and bring unnecessary trouble to Naruto-sama. Ningxi lowered his head and said, Yes. Seeing that Ningxi listened carefully, a smile appeared on Rich's serious face. He has made many decisions in his life, but only letting his son Niji worship Hyuga Kuroto as his teacher is his proudest and the most correct decision he has ever made. What does the identity of Naruto's disciple mean? He is very clear. This is not just an honor, but also an opportunity to change fate, an opportunity to fight against the caged bird. When his talented son was engraved with the caged bird, he fell into despair and even gave birth to evil thoughts. He wanted to kill Miss Hinata, who had mediocre aptitude. And the reason why he did this is because he understood that Ningxi's fate was doomed from the moment he engraved the caged bird. No matter how good and kind Ningxi is, he can no longer get the blessing of fate and become the person who controls fate. But the moment Hyojin became the 5th generation Naruto, many people's fate changed, and the one who benefited the most was undoubtedly Naruto's disciple, Ningxi. This is because according to the village's tradition, Naruto's disciple is the most natural candidate for Naruto. In other words, under normal circumstances, Ningxi, who has no chance of becoming Naruto's disciple, has the precious qualification to become Naruto's candidate because of his teacher Hyojin. Looking at his son who is growing up and looking more and more handsome, Richa said in his heart, Ningxi, you are no longer a caged bird. Please work hard to spread your wings and soar. Second update. Please continue to plead for monthly votes during the double period. Also, thank you to the students who tipped yesterday. Thank you so much. Chapter 826. Putting Naruto's bamboo hat on the desk, Hyojin came to the window. Before the vote of confidence had begun today, 3 generations had already moved their personal belongings away. So from this moment on, Hyojin was the owner of Naruto's office. He had actually been to this Naruto's office many times, but it was the first time he had appeared here as the owner. So, to him, everything here was both familiar and unfamiliar. 1, 2, 3, 24. With a slight perception, Hyojin found that there were as many as 24 Black Ops people on duty near Naruto's office. There were 6 fully equipped Black Ops squads. After comparing it with the Naruto building's garrison map in his hand, Hyojin confirmed that his perception was correct. There were indeed 6 black ops squads guarding this Naruto's office in the dark. Tisk so troublesome. Hyojin, who was having a headache, slowly sat back on Naruto's chair. This kind of defense would undoubtedly create a lot of trouble for him to slack off at work in the future. This was also one of the problems he had considered before when he walked to the front desk. Knock, knock. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door. Rubbing his forehead, Hyojin said casually, "Come in." Kakashi, who was holding a document, walked in and then bowed to Hyojin in a well-behaved manner. "Naruto-sama?" Hyojin waved his hand helplessly. "Is there a need for this between us? Just say it. What trouble do you have to trouble me with?" Kakashi and Hyojin were not only contemporaries, but they were also colleagues in the same Black Ops squad. Their relationship was like that of 3 generations in Danzo, Juan Xiao Chun, Mito Hamura, and others, so they could address each other casually. Seeing that Hyojin did not put on airs because he had become Naruto, Kakashi smiled. "Kuroto, you are Naruto now, so you have the right to know some secrets in the village." Saying that, Kakashi placed the confidential document in his hand in front of Hyojin's desk. Hyojin picked up the document and asked, "What is this?" Kakashi immediately put away the smile on his face and said with a solemn expression, "Kuroto, what you are holding in your hand is one of the highest secrets in the village. Please keep it a secret after you read it." Top secret again. Kakashi's words reminded Hyojin of the top secret that Kakashi had mentioned to him before about the village planting a spy in the Uchiha clan. Then, Hyojin glanced at the document in his hand and saw the words Amatsukumi's analysis report written on the cover page. Ugh! Hyojin's hand that was turning the page slowed down, and his expression became strange. Kakashi walked around Naruto's desk and walked to Hyojin's side, explaining to Hyojin in detail, "The village's analysis of Amatsukumi has always been carried out in secret. This report is a summary of all the known intelligence information. You are now Naruto, so it is inevitable that you will come into contact with Amatsukumi in the future. So, you must have some understanding of Amatsukumi, and the content of this report is what you need to know." Listening to Kakashi's serious narration, Hyojin became curious and opened the Amatsukumi's analysis report. The first page of the report was the file of Amatsukumi's leader, Yama. Seeing Suijin flipping to the file of Yama, Kakashi immediately introduced, "This Yama is the leader of Amatsukumi, and he is probably the strongest ninja in the shinobi world at the moment. A few years ago, around the time when we were in the Umbu Team 11, he had a period of active period that lasted for several months. Later on, the village investigated. During that short period of activity that lasted for several months, he accepted more than 60% of the bounty missions in the country of Fire's black market at an astonishing speed. The average time for each mission was 3 to 5 days. His efficiency was so high that it was shocking. And the intelligence team analyzed all the bounty missions he completed and found that many of the missions would take more than a week to complete at the speed of Jonin. So we have reason to suspect that he has mastered some kind of extremely fast flying ninjutsu, or some kind of space-time ninjutsu similar to the flying thunder god jutsu. Hyojin smiled. Has the village also investigated these things? Kakashi said seriously, "This Yama is a key figure who can control the future of the ninja world, so we must pay enough attention to everything about him. At present, the village is unable to determine why he accepted a large number of bounty missions in such a short period of time. The analysis of the intelligence team is that he may be honing some kind of ninjutsu or tactics, and my personal judgment is also inclined to this point." Hyojin rubbed his nose slightly awkwardly. "Do you all think so?" As if thinking of something, Kakashi joked, "The opinions of 3 generations in Jiraiya Sama are generally consistent with the analysis of the intelligence team. Only Tsunade Sama firmly believes that Yama is doing this for the bounty of the black market. But you also know that Tsunade Sama is a bit obsessed with money." Ahem. Coughing twice, Hyojin's face became serious. It's really inexplicable. How can such a strong person just do it for money? Kakashi nodded in agreement. He also felt that it is impossible for a person like Yama to run around for the bounty of the black market. That is completely inconsistent with the style of Yama, the strongest person in the ninja world. Chapter 827. As he continued to read, Hyojin saw the analysis of the master of Amatsukami. Perhaps it was because the master of Amatsukami had fought against the 3 generations Naruto, so the description of the master of Amatsukami was very detailed. Seeing that Hyojin had turned to the part about the master of Amatsukami, Kakashi immediately introduced. The master of Amatsukami is most likely an ice-release Kekai ninja of the Mist Village. He is very good at ice and water-release ninjutsu, and his taijutsu is also extraordinary. He has no shortcomings and is a powerful ninja with rich experience. Hyojin quickly scanned through the file of the master of Amatsukami, and then his eyes fell on the words, "Identity unknown" at the end of the file, and he asked with a smile, "His identity has not been found out?" Kakashi shook his head. The 4 generations Mizukage was secretly controlled by the Akatsuki organization. During that period, the Mist Village was very chaotic, and rebellions occurred frequently. The Snow Clan of the Ice Release, the Kagaya Clan of the Corpse Bone Clan, and other Kekuki clans of the Mist Village all participated in the rebellion. In the end, they were all killed by the Mist Village, and the information was lost. Therefore, the Mist Village could not find out the identity of the master of Amatsukami. Is that so? Kuroto grinned at Kuroto. No one knew the situation of the Mist Village better than him. During the days when Yagura was secretly controlled by the Obsidian, there were rebellions almost every day. Even now, Zabuza and the others who had started the rebellion were still at large, so it was normal that they could not find out the identity of the master of Amatsukami. Soon, Hyojin turned to the part about the Inferno in the file. Compared to the previous part about the master of Amatsukami, the part about the Inferno was much longer. It was obvious that the village valued the Inferno far more than the master of Amatsukami. The situation of the Inferno is a bit special. There should be a male and a female Inferno in Amatsukami. The male Inferno's Susanoo is red, and it is equipped with the legendary sealing artifact Tenseigan, while the female Inferno's Susanoo is golden, and it is surrounded by golden flames. Kakashi's introduction reached Hyojin's ears. Hyojin didn't pay much attention to Kakashi's introduction, but he paid attention to a comparison picture in the file. This comparison drawing depicts 2 Susanoo, one of which is marked with the words Homasubi of Amatsukami, and the other with the words Uchiha Fugaku. From the picture, it could be seen that the 2 Susanoo were very similar in shape and color. The only obvious difference was that one was holding a gourd-shaped divine artifact, the Sword of 10 Fists, while the other didn't. Hyojin sighed in his heart, as expected of the father and son. It was not by chance that Do had such achievements. In the original time and space, in order to inherit Orochimaru's will and find the meaning of life, Medicine Master Do had frantically integrated the remains of Orochimaru into his body, completely contaminating his body and chakra, turning him into a monster that was neither human nor ghost. It should be known that Orochimaru did not have the talent to cultivate celestial techniques. Therefore, Orochimaru's flesh and chakra were not beneficial to Medicine Master Do, who cultivated celestial techniques. Instead, they became obstacles that hindered his cultivation of celestial techniques. Cultivating celestial techniques not only required a strong will, but also a pure soul and an attitude that was compatible with nature. Medicine Master Do who had turned himself into a monster, was at most close to having a strong will. He obviously had nothing to do with having a pure soul and being compatible with nature. Even so, he still mastered celestial techniques, which showed how terrifying his talent was. In the original time and space, Do did not do stupid things like in the original time and space. Therefore, when he cultivated celestial techniques with a pure body and felt the energy of nature, his achievements naturally far surpassed him in the original time and space. Soon, Do put away his emotions and rushed in the direction of the Sound Village. After returning to the Sound Village, Do immediately gathered the 4 Sound Ninjas and asked about their harvest. Orochimaru's laboratory was not concentrated together. The laboratory located in the Sound Village to study Edo Tensei technique had been cracked by Do before. The remaining 4 important laboratories were distributed throughout the country of Tion. Therefore, in order to save time, the 4 Sound Ninjas were ordered to crack the 4 laboratories separately before going to the Ryuchi Cave. Hearing Do's question, Kimimaro was the first to say, "The laboratory in the northern coastal sea has been cracked by me. It is full of information about Orochimaru-sama's research on the Uzumaki clan's sealing technique." After saying that, Kimimaro took out some scrolls. Yamato then said, "The laboratory in the south has been cracked by me. It is full of information about Orochimaru-sama's research on the Chimera technique." Haku took out a few scrolls and said, "The laboratory in the west has been cracked by me. It is the laboratory where Orochimaru-sama studies human cloning." Yugo finally took out a scroll and said, "I went to the laboratory on the east side to take a look. That is the place where Orochimaru-sama studies the curse of heaven, and I discovered a secret about the curse of heaven inside." Yamato and Haku, who were implanted with the curse seal of heaven by Orochimaru, quickly looked over and asked, "What secret?" Do also looked over. Chapter 830. Under the night sky, my village is brightly lit, and the night market is bustling. In terms of business alone, my village is undoubtedly ahead of the other 4 shinobi villages. Hyojin's home. Closing the document in his hand, Hyojin rubbed his forehead. After being the Hokage for a few days, he became more and more depressed. Although he has pushed all the daily official duties of Naruto to the advisory elder group, the documents that need to be signed by him, the 5th generation Naruto, can't be written by others, so there are a lot of staff looking for him to sign all kinds of decrees and documents every day. In addition to work, his daily life has also been greatly affected. In the past, when he was on the streets, he could do as he pleased. He could go wherever he wanted and do whatever he wanted. But now, when he was on the streets, everyone would bow to him and greet him politely. It annoyed him to no end. In the past, if he wanted to sneak out of the village, he could just leave a shadow clone. But now, as a Hokage, his every word and every move is being watched by many parties. Leaving only one shadow doppelganger, he may not be able to cope with it. And once the shadow doppelganger is exposed, it will cause a commotion in the village, which will be another trouble. What a headache! After sighing, Hyojin turned his head and looked out of the window. Although it was already late at night, his newly formed shadow guard was still loyally guarding the vicinity of his small courtyard. This made him feel extremely uncomfortable. In fact, when Kuroto submitted the list of his shadow guard members to the advisory elder group, Hokage-sama and the other elders raised objections. They felt that the members selected by Kuroto were too young, lacking in strength and experience, and hoped that Kuroto could reselect some stronger ninjas to serve as a shadow guard. So, Kuroto decided to reselect some stronger ninjas to serve as the shadow guard. Hyojin smiled and directly ignored the advice of the advisory elder group. Where was the shadow guards when Shodame-sama fought with Uchiha Madara? Where were the shadow guards when the Second King was besieged and killed by the Goldhorn and Silverhorn brothers? Where were the shadow guards when the Yondaime-sama died, sealing the Nine Tails? Even when 3 generations of himself was killed by Orochimaru in the original space-time, the so-called shadow guards only made a temporary guest commentary on the scene. History had proven time and time again that the Shadow Guards could not protect Naruto. If they really encounter a problem that even Naruto himself couldn't deal with, then even if the Shadow Guards went up, they would most likely die in vain. Instead of spending time on selecting members of the Shadow Guard, it was better to find people who he knew well and could trust to become the Shadow Guard. As for strength and experience,